Hi, everybody. Welcome to LARP Chat Live. This week, we're discussing romance and LARP, and we're going to take it away with that. Dan, if you'd like to reintroduce everyone here, since we're recording now, that would be awesome, and then we'll dive right in.
All right. As we all know, Tara Clapper, the den mother of the TGI, is kind enough to host us. The Geek Initiative is a great website. You should go check it out. We'll put a link up in chat right now. And they have a bunch of articles and content that cover the entire realm of our hobby and beyond. So maybe go there and get something new on your palette. Amy Wojciechowski is joining us today. She is very well educated in the field of nerddom. She is also our local skating buff. So sometimes when I'm wearing a costume, I'm like, would this guy wear it? Amy's like, no, but it looks awesome. And she's like, and it wouldn't be elastic. And I'm like, all right. So she has a wide array of talents and creativity, and she actually, when she's not who she is, she role plays being a teacher or a librarian and affects the lives and molds the minds of youth coming of age.
It's a scary thought some days, you know.
Yeah.
But I work with 5th or 8th graders in a middle school, which most people are terrified of in that 10 to 14-year-old age range, but I think they're great. So it's like hanging out with a bunch of LARPers all the time. We all laugh at the same jokes. We all have the same sense of humor. It works well.
Yeah, we all read on the same reading level.
No, some of them actually are higher than others.
All right. Amy, you're running the show this week. Feel free to.
Oh, I'm not. Am I? Oh, hey,
you're kind of the boss.
Well, I did want to give a shout out to Tina Dagenhart, who was our guest 2 weeks ago, just to let everybody know that she did go to that Burka tournament that she was very excited about, and she did kick some ass. She fought the entire 3 hours, and she was pretty awesome. So
I saw the pictures. It was pretty intense.
Yes.
Like the bear pits they had set up, it's crammed. Oh my god. It must have smelled amazing in there.
It's a big auditorium. Yeah.
Tina's also the champion of the Geek Initiative, so I'm just throwing that out there. I did have to challenge someone to honor combat once, and they declined fighting us, but had they accepted, Tina would have destroyed them.
Mm-hmm. So I guess tonight's topic is love and romance and LARP and all these different things. One of the reasons that I was enthusiastic about this topic, although I hate Valentine's Day, is because I've helped be a LARP admin for almost 20 years, and we have seen all permutations of relationships, in-game, out-of-game. We've had people who've met in-game, have gotten married out-of-game, had babies, sometimes gotten divorced once they've been married out of game. We've had people who, have had long-term relationships in character, all sorts of crazy things. So I thought it would be a fun topic to talk about. And thanks to Tara and Max for letting me jump in.
Yeah, we're happy to have you, and hopefully we'll see more of you.
Absolutely. I'll see what I can do. So the first question we have is from Tara, which is, should you play a character who is in a relationship with your real-life partner? Ooh.
This is all easy for me to talk about, because just to give some background, my first real LARP experience was at a game that my husband was actually helping to run. So at the time, he was just this guy that I just sort of met. I was interested in him, but I ended up staying with him and then marrying him, and without any kind of breakup or interruption. So for me, this is like the super easy topic, I feel like, compared to some other people, because I got into the hobby when the guy that I ended up with was already in it. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there first. I'm going to be a little smug about it, because I feel like other people have gone through a lot of trials and tribulations about this topic. But I just wanted to kind of toss that out there before we got into the story everyone knew.
I think I'm going to jump in and respond to that. So my love life and LARP history are very long and varied. I have had out-of-game relationships with people that I was never involved with in-game. I have had in-game relationships with people that I was never involved with out-of-game. My characters have been married and engaged. I have been engaged and married. Max and I were a thing for quite a few years and lived together, but our characters were actually not necessarily involved at the time. So I think one of the dangers that I think everybody can sort of see coming is always the what happens when we break up. When you have two characters that you've developed and you've worked with them together for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden you break up. It's really, really a hard thing. You can either use that as part of your growing experience with your character, but I have had people who have just stopped playing a character completely because they just couldn't. They had made a character with someone and could not stand to be separated from them.
And I gotta agree with you with that. I mean, some characters are defined by the people that are around them in any story. So a theatrical, story-driven live action role-playing game is no different. I'm sure you and I can name a bunch of people that you always see them in tandem, even if they're not dating. It's hard to explain it without naming names, but we do have friends
you and
that
Tara
like your
play characters together.
Yeah, we play characters together all the time, and that we get along very well. And I like to think that some of the characters I've played with Tara's characters have had a profound impact on their story. That's because I'm very egotistical. But the fact that I no longer play those characters with her, I like to think that story lives on. And I guess at a certain level of maturity and a certain level of appreciation for the game and the cooperative story, you actually even consider that's even on your radar, whereas some people might not even think about that. So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah,
I think it's harder.
Oh, go ahead, Amy.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's harder when you create your character concepts together. I've definitely seen that be an issue. If you're sort of playing your character and somebody else is playing their character and you come together, then that relationship and that breakup could be part of the natural evolution of that character's storyline. But when you and your significant other come up with a great idea and are going to play them together, and then something happens and you guys break up, then you end up in the situation where you have this character created for a sole purpose, and now you can be out of luck.
Yeah, I wanted to address some of the comments going on in the side there, saying that, hey, if you're married, maybe it's like an okay idea, that kind of thing, to play a character in a relationship with your partner's character. And I have to say, like, one of the sweetest things ever was when my husband and I were both staff on a game, and we played these NPCs that had they were controlled by plot. We weren't really necessarily writing them, but they had like gotten together and then they actually got married. And of course, plot knew that we were obviously like comfortable, with that because we were together in real life. And it ended up being on the weekend of our actual wedding anniversary that our characters got married. It was really cute. I don't think anybody wrote it that way. Ever. I don't think anyone wrote it that way on purpose. But it was fun. So it can be rewarding, but I would also want to say that I wouldn't necessarily want to play the same situation over and over. Like, I wouldn't want to go to every LARP with my husband every time and always get married to him. You know what I mean? Like, that's the same relationship over and over with the same person. And, while it's okay, I guess, to play out the same kind of relationship, if you have that sort of chemistry, whether it's like, as a couple or like, like my friend Callie and I are really close. So, if we go to LARPs other than our home LARP, we'll play like sisters. Like, that's great because it can strengthen your real life relationship too, whatever that is. I think it gets boring personally just to do this exact same thing every single time. Like, you want to switch it up here and there.
Yeah,
especially
I agree.
When you're going to a new game.
Yeah, I mean, you spend a significant amount of time with your out-of-game partner. One of the reasons I think that we all LARP is because of that opportunity to play a part of ourselves or a character that we've always envisioned that we don't get to play every day. So if you're playing with your significant other, you may end up falling into the same roles, falling into the same behavior patterns, and it ends up not being fun for people, and it ends up being, more work. Just, yeah. Sorry.
No, that's great.
Max, what do you want to add?
I don't really feel strongly about it in either way. I like that anytime you do see someone who is a couple and have characters together, it's not very common. So the fact that you have any two people that are close enough with each other, either because they're actually dating or close on an out of game level, to see those kinds of interactions. Like, I would love to see like a couple fight that's completely in game in a social setting. Like, you never see it because it never happens, because we have a bunch of people that aren't there with their significant others, and they don't have those kinds of in character relationships. And if they do have them, they are definitely not having an in-character fight. So it opens the door to such greater depth of story, is I guess the way of saying it.
Yeah, and that's
absolutely.
true. We've all seen the couple that like they break up out of game, and then it's like, oh well, we want to handle this.
Did you bring my sword?
Yeah.
Did you
bring
grab my sword out of the carriage?
What
do you mean? No, I carried all the others. Oh, and you couldn't grab my sword. So I guess I'm just not going to go on adventures tonight. And then they just sit down. And
we've all seen it happen where like the breakup occurs out of game. And they're like, oh,
yes.
we're gonna handle this maturely. So how do our characters end the relationship? Because obviously this can't still be a thing. And
my character leaves with all the magic items.
All that gold gone.
And it definitely creates this weird dynamic too, because in a lot of breakups, not all of them, but in a lot of them, there's sometimes you can have the one partner that's still hanging on to some feelings, or maybe the situation wasn't resolved the way everybody wanted it to be. And so when they come in game, everybody's cool with it. Everybody's playing their own characters, but then that person starts hitting on somebody else, and immediately tears happen, or the rage happens, or the awkwardness happens, and it just becomes this huge blow up, and everybody's legitimately concerned because they don't want to see their friends upset. But at the same time, we've all had those moments where you're like, this isn't role playing and it's awkward and it's terrible.
And that kind of brings us over to, I was trying to scroll down to the next question, but it's failing. I'd asked, what do you do if you're in a committed relationship in real life and you're thinking about your character your character is going to maybe pursue a romantic relationship, just strictly in game. And thank you for whoever put that up there. And my advice there is pretty brief. It's like, just define your limits beforehand with your significant other, and then obviously clear that with the player of the other person, the person playing the character that is your character's love interest. And also, my other form of advice, and everyone's gonna laugh when they hear this, is if you're at like a campaign LARP, like, don't go for another PC. Just go for an NPC who isn't there a lot. Like, you can still kind of develop your character.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Right?
Yeah.
You can still kind of develop your character's feelings, and it can still impact their storyline, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean you have to be like, oh, I love you, like every single time. And they still get to do their own stuff. So that's worked out pretty well for me.
And there's less of a chance for that other person to like mess it up, because it's all like one-sided, and the relationship can exist 85% in your head.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, so you have a lot more control over the flow. I think that's really good advice.
Until they send an order for you to be killed in game or something, which would never happen.
I guess a lot of those issues begin and end with communication. So, like any issues with your partner, talk about it and be honest and not judgmental and communicative, and it shouldn't be an issue.
I think that's I think Max and Tara absolutely have it correctly. I mean, you have to have your rules. I'm married out of game, and I have an in-game, in my primary character, I have an in-game relationship with someone that I'm good friends with, but that I'm not involved with out of game. And it's this, people do think that we are really a thing out of game, and people do sometimes look at you a little weird, if you're sitting on somebody's lap or things like that. But it's not a secret. It's not hidden. I, come home after the weekend and tell my husband all of the things that happened over the weekend and all the, adventures we went on. And it's cool. I think if I were trying to get something over on him, or maybe convince everybody it was only in game and I didn't need to talk about it out of game because it's only in game, that's where I think you start to run into this weird gray area and people's feelings get hurt.
Yeah. And one place I see people struggle is where they don't acknowledge the relationship as it develops in game, and they don't acknowledge that there's any in game and or out of game attraction because they're set in their relationship, and because they won't admit it to themselves or to the other people involved, then it's like that's what makes it weird. You know what I mean? It's like that because then it's just this thing you don't talk about, and it's like it just becomes strange. And you know, I've seen some people like they develop the in-game relationship, and you know then what? Like they don't talk about it with anyone, and then where do you go with it? You know, and that like the unknown is like the scary and awkward part, from what I can tell.
I think. Go ahead, Max.
The only one thing I wanted to throw in there is that this idea that it's kind of assumed that this person that you're initiating with, that you have some form of out-of-game relationship with. For a while, I played a game, and for the first year, I kind of was like a jerk in that I specifically endeavored not to have any relationships with any of the other players on an out-of-game level. Because at my current game, I had such a strong relationship with so many people, I didn't see them frequently, that often in a time of lull where there wasn't like an active plot or storyline going on, we would kind of whisper off to the side out of game because we missed each other and we wanted to catch up on each other's life. So I was like, as an experiment, let me not get to know these people at all so that they only have in-game things to talk to me about. And it actually kind of worked. But when you're going for a deeper story or a deeper connection like that, you should probably be comfortable on a non-in-game level with somebody or have that kind of talk.
Now,
because it can make some people feel weird.
When you did that and you just had people know you like just in game, you didn't really interact with them out of the game?
I had a face covering, like like you wouldn't even recognize me. Like,
when you did that, did you have any romantic relationships develop in character?
No, I mean, I was playing a kind of a goofy. I wasn't playing like a suave or romantic character. I was fearful at every turn, and I was kind of goofy. I was like a goofy desert dweller, so I was scared all the time. And but I would get serious about magic. Like when we would talk about magic or magical things, I would get very serious. And I was a merchant, but there was.
Max is frozen for me anyway.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I lost him too.
Yeah, he's just like frozen there making a weird face on my screen. He'll come back. He'll come back. But anything else on you know, if you're kind of like involved in a relationship or married and then pursuing an in-game relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've sort of covered all the bases. You have to talk. You have to talk to your significant other.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's your primary relationship and that's the way you're looking at it, then your in-game relationships are going to have to take a back seat to that.
Yeah.
Without that communication. Hopefully you're with someone who knows that you LARP and loves that you LARP and is willing to try that, you know, to try LARPing so they're not, you know, at home being angry because you're out having, you know, developing relationships with other people or trying to control you from doing that. But, you know, ultimately, yeah, you have to be honest because you've just I've seen it happen too many times. I'm sure we've all seen it happen, you know. People do. It's just in game, and then, you know, somebody breaks up, and the next thing you know, it's not, and it becomes a big mess. And especially as a staff member, you know, it's really important to keep yourself separated from that, but also still be aware of it because we've had situations where, you know, bad breakups have gone aggressive or passive aggressive and people have gotten hurt and there's been allegations in game and out of game and things like that. So it can really be tricky from an administrative point of view to handle as well as from a player character point of view.
And your character doesn't necessarily have to be open to a relationship at all. So if you go into a game knowing for whatever reason, whether it's an out of game reason or because you just want to explore completely other things in game, you know, go into it with an in-character reason for why. You know, like my character at my main game, like I said, she's really into like a specific NPC that isn't there very often. So does she get interest from other PCs and NPCs? Yes. Does she have a really good reason for not, you know, pursuing that? Absolutely. She's into this one guy who could kill her. So like it's not as bad as it sounds, I swear. But you know, like there's a reason, there's an established reason, you know, maybe your character, like, I don't know, maybe like they're celibate, they're like super religious and that's their thing, or Max is like, I would never play that character ever.
One of our
Not for more than one of that.
one of our founding members has a player, Wu Sing Jet, who is a cleric and has this wonderful backstory. I mean, Scott Melzer, he's a great role player, and he has this wonderful backstory about his fiance. His character's fiance, they died or killed himself or something. And so he's been playing this character for 20 years and has remained celibate and faithful and devoted to her memory. And, you know, uses that to his advantage when he's role playing with different people and situations and, you know, even life and death situations and coming back from a spiritual realm and things like that. It's a really powerful motivator for that character, and something I probably would never have considered. But it really works for him. So I think Tara's point is absolutely beautiful about, you know, can you turn this idea, can you play it from a different angle if you're reluctant to become involved with another PC in game?
Yeah, and I'm a very career-oriented person in real life, and there were some times throughout my career where I wasn't doing what I wanted to as a job. Like I didn't have a lot of fulfillment in my career, even though that was really important to me. So in LARP, I was able to focus on fulfilling that aspect. You know, like it's okay to sometimes use LARP as wish fulfillment, and wish fulfillment isn't always all about romance. It's about other areas of your life that maybe you wanted to like explore or improve. And so for me, you know, a lot of that was like, gosh, I wish I had more of like a sense of fulfillment in my career, and I was able to pursue that in games. So just like in real life, remember, like, yeah, love might be really important to you, but it's not the only thing. Maybe you want to try and pursue another passion or hobby, or, you know, try something new.
I like this question over here. I don't know if we've talked about it. Have you ever initiated a character romance with someone you didn't know at all beforehand? And I'm assuming I'm assuming Jess means both in game and out of game. You just sort of spot somebody across, you know, the crowded inn, and you're like, hey, there we go. Oh gosh, I don't know if I ever have. But Max, you said all the time. Go ahead.
Not like there are some characters that I like to be treated a certain way, and there's some characters I like to act a certain way. So I have a character that is like a swashbuckler rogue, and like the rogue character is a very diverse class. We have people that show up like they're fresh off like extras from Assassin's Creed, and then we have like one of our mutual friends, Sean McGarry, and myself. We're more oral, like we're more fast talkers with our mouths and distracting. And I try to play that charismatic type character, and you know, I'm not hot shit. I know I'm not. That's fine, but I can act it, and I dress up, and I'm flashy, and I'm changing subjects really fast, and like I'll engage somebody, and then I'll get bored with them, and then I'll leave, and I'll engage someone else. So there is a flirtatious attitude about my character that maybe in retrospect could be not always appropriate, or could make people feel uncomfortable. I mean, I never touch. There's never an intensity, and I'm a very good judge or read of characters. So if there's awkwardness or weirdness, I kind of like RP my way out of it. I would never pressure anybody. But like this past weekend, there was like 2 or 3 people. Like we had a ball, there was a dance, and like they were like friends, and like I engaged them like while they weren't near their friend, and like kind of flirted with them. And when I saw their friend coming, I would leave. And then when the other friend, I would like engage and flirt with them. And I was trying to naturally set up this scenario where they were like, hey, I met this guy. He's like super funny. And then like, they're like, oh yeah, me too. And like, I tried to naturally do that, but I don't think it happened. But I thought that would be a hilarious story for my character. And then like, I wanted them to confront me and then maybe pour like a drink on my head. But like, I don't know. So I initiated a character romance, but it wasn't meaningful. You know, it was a tryst, it was flirtation. But to like a true romance, a true relationship, no, never.
Yeah, same for me.
Yeah,
like it just never really happened, I guess. Like I LARP a lot with people that I already know. So anytime that there's any sort of like in-character flirtation or whatever, even if it's not discussed beforehand, it's just like, I think there's like a level of comfortability there because I already know them. But it's also just like, I just happen to LARP a lot with people I know, or like friends of friends. So it's not, any kind of like unexpected crazy awkwardness.
Yeah, I think there's a difference too. I think there's a difference between flirting with someone that you may or may not know in game. And, my character is a gypsy and she's been around for 20 years and she's,
broken a lot of hearts.
And, so she naturally has this sort of flirtatious aspect to her. But as far as a romance with someone I didn't know, I would have to get to know them because you don't know what their out-of-game expectations are. You don't know what their out-of-game situation is. The last thing I want to do is have some, chica shanking me in a parking lot because she thinks I'm going after her man. And, that is not the case. So, you definitely want to make sure that you sort of have established an out of game, at least conversation. Hey, this is working for me from a role playing standpoint. Is it working for you? Before I think you get into
and
it.
knowing the rules of the game that you're in and whatever kind of like signals and or vocabulary that you're supposed to use to kind of like pause and ask at a game like, hey, is this okay? Like, is this making you uncomfortable? Whatever. That can always be useful no matter what style you're playing in.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Jess.
Yeah, and there was another question along those same lines, I thought, where somebody asked, and I'm sorry that I don't have it immediately handy, but somebody asked, there it is, Frank's question. How do you suggest handling physical contact as part of a romantic relationships in a LARP?
I only role play with people things that would happen in public, personally. For me, I'm putting on a show for people. I've never really been on like the one-on-one RP. It's not naturally happened to me. I guess for me, I always want to feel like I'm on stage. So some of the more intimate examples would never come up. But I do have a funny story that involves that. Can I share it?
Yes, please share.
Sure.
Right, so there's this girl. She was extremely attractive. I was extremely wide-eyed, doughy-eyed. LARPer. I was playing my swashbuckler character, my charismatic character, but I wasn't confident yet. I was still kind of new. So I'm doing like the Biden thing where I just kind of hang out near them. Like I'm not like over their shoulder. I'm just kind of like I'm always like in the same room. Or like
Biden thing.
Like, we just
Is that a thing he does?
It's from the New Girl. Like you're just always there. You're always there, and
Right.
there becomes this like situational proximity comfort level. But sure enough, one thing led to another. I got involved in some of their more intimate role play, I guess, or like I started being involved in more and more conversations. And after a few events, they were like, "Oh, like you should join my religion." I'm like, "All right, yeah, I'll hang out with you and your crew." Definitely super hot person. And then they're like, after the baptism, which was like near like the central player, they're like, all right, well, now's the last step. And I'm like, what do you mean last step? It was like more of like an earthy druidic type religion. So like, we're going to go to the druid grove and and I was like, I was like, what? I looked around for like a split second. I was like, this is a trick. This is a trap. And I was just like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And then I was like, no, I'll pass. I'll pass. Whereas if I had zero feelings, if she was just some girl, I would have been like, all right, yeah, let's go do the thing. But like every time she looked at me, my heart skipped a beat. So I was like I didn't want to like say anything weird. So I was just like, no, I'm good. And it became this running gag for like a year. For like a year, they're like, it's the only guy ever to say no. And I was just like, oh, God.
Now you're that guy.
It was a funny story, but sorry. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I think somebody said consent, and I think that I'm not going to speak for Dan, but but I know Tara and I are definitely you have to have consent. I mean, it's one thing if it's a natural part of the evolution. I think Frank's saying that if it's a natural part of the evolution of your character and your relationship, I mean, at some point you might expect if I'm engaged, if I'm engaged to this person, if we have a relationship, at least I'm going to want to hold hands, brush their arm, you know what I mean? Maybe sit next to them in a romantic way. But you really have to kind of feel that. But I get it's similar to real life too. I mean, I don't, and maybe I'm incorrect, but I don't always ask someone if I'm getting into a relationship with them, is it okay if we start holding hands now? You sort of feel where the relationship is going and going.
Yeah, I mean,
but
definitely. again, like the rules of the specific LARP can guide you a little bit there too, because like a lot of games have like a no touch at all policy unless there's a permission. Other games, it's like healing, for example, is done through touch. So like obviously you're going to touch someone on the back or the shoulder if you're healing them. But anything that goes beyond, I think that whatever the policy is that people are already consenting to by playing, you would want to like kind of ask. Other things you could do is like clarify like stuff that happens like between events if you're playing a campaign game. I've seen characters go into a tent and then they just out of game discuss what happens, or if they feel comfortable, they make some noises. But like
I did a state test one time where like you like grip hands so that, and then like the other hand cups the mouth so you don't see that you're gripping hands, and like you kiss your own thumb and it looks like you're French kissing, but at the end of the day you're super close to each other. So
right.
if the scene calls for it, you can kind of make it happen. But if one person's just trying to force it, ask yourself, is it really necessary?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that's
I mean,
interesting. Yeah, I was going to say from an NPC side. Sorry, Tara, keep talking over you. Go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say from what Dan's talking about with that, like if you think about the theatricality of being an NPC and having to present a scene, I mean, it's a similar situation. If you're not the story writer, even if you are the story writer, you're going to find yourself potentially in these situations where it calls for your character to be romantically involved with another NPC, and playing that situation is definitely something you need to work out ahead of time. Sorry, Tara.
Yeah. The weirdest, going along with that from the NPC side. So I said that my husband and I got married in game as NPCs as part of a plot, and we like had a kiss, and it was like there was a kiss that was even filmed, and it was all sweet and stuff. But the weirdest, most strange, bizarre NPC experience was when I had to play his sister. I was like, whoa, no Lannister, no, no, do not do. So the flip side of that is like you want to avoid when you're casting people, like making them feel uncomfortable in all ways. Like, oh my gosh, don't put two people in a relationship with each other as a brother and sister. It's weird.
Wasn't it? Didn't we have a necromancer that like had his girlfriend play his daughter?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, yeah. Like I think I went to a game somewhere, and this necromancer who was dating a girl was probably, I think, maybe like 6-8 years younger than him. I don't know. Doesn't matter. But she also looked young. Like she looked young for her age. So
I think I remember that. Yes.
His daughter, and it was super creepy.
Wow.
But he was like trying to be this incredibly creepy, like fringes of society, like super long ago. But I just always sticks in the back of my brain. I'm like,
yeah, like the whole physical contact thing. I mean, that's generally going to be up to both of the people involved and or their partners to, like, again, communicate, talk about that kind of thing, and go from there. So next question we have from Sam: how do you deal with someone who only seems to be interested in relationships in game? Do you mean like the only reason they're LARPing is like totally just to be in a relationship 24/7?
It means that they don't want to date you. Oh, okay, never mind.
Okay.
I was wrong.
So they're like here just to like, okay, just to do all the shipping all the time, and all their characters do that all the time. Jeez, I have actually not encountered that a lot. Like I've encountered characters like that, but then the person plays another character and they're not like that. So it doesn't really bother me either way, but it would weird me out if somebody played a character who was showing interest in my character and then played a different character who was like still interested in whatever character I was playing. Like, yeah, that would weird me out. Like, come on, like you could just say something at a game. Like, that's a little creepy. I don't know. Have you guys ever dealt with that?
No, never comes up for me.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if Sam wants to. I don't know if he can jump in, but like I'm curious to have him explain more of what that situation would be like, because that's one that I haven't.
Sam, I'm gonna hop out. Go ahead and call in and talk about this here.
joining us is Sam Reeder. He's a member of the TGI LARPer extraordinaire, and he's going to further elaborate our question of how do you deal with
now I feel bad because I didn't want to bump her out of the screen, but
in relationships in game. So go ahead, Sam. Elaborate, if you will.
Can you explain what you mean by that first? I'm sorry. Can you just explain? Like, I'm not sure. Give us some background.
Yeah, I'll try to do this in the most of my experience isn't necessarily in LARPs with this, because a lot of the LARPs I do, it's like over the course of 3 days, it's very action oriented and it's very sort of, clumped in one place. But as I've gone out further into like tabletop gaming and like the online RP I do and stuff like that, I find a lot of people, more and more people who are what one ex-friend of mine put so succinctly as hunting for ass. And as I actually have a tabletop game coming up with one of these problem players, I just wondered if anyone had any thoughts on it.
I would take Sarah's advice from earlier and lock them into a committed relationship. That's all they've ever wanted from an NPC. And then when you want to have those moments, they're there. When you don't, they're gone.
That is actually, that is, should be the way to do it. Because there have been times where someone has basically just gone, so I've really been having thoughts about you, and I'm like, motherfucker, we're in the middle of a giant worm. I am up to my waist in guts here. This is not the right time to talk about my feelings for you that don't exist anyway.
That's funny.
So you have people in the middle of a game trying to get you to commit to an in-game relationship, distracting you from another situation. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, or it's like in the middle of a battle scene, and it's like, hey, hey.
In between texts that you're receiving from your actual partner, you have the person next to you at the table that's doing the same thing.
Or there was like actually, I've actually had that happen too. There was once where I was in the middle of sort of kind of phasing out a relationship with someone, and someone was trying to have an in-game relationship with me while my sort of not quite girlfriend anymore was IMing me going, so hey, by the way, I've decided to see someone else. And I'm like, and so I have these two like things basically like competing for my attention. And eventually I just yelled at everybody, just let me handle this for a moment. But by then she'd already signed off.
So can I ask you the important question?
Go ahead.
We're all thinking.
What
happened with the worm?
We got out, and thankfully that game like ended not long after, because I could not handle any more of that nonsense from that player.
Well, thanks, Sam. That was extremely helpful. Want to hang out for a little bit more? We got a couple more questions coming up.
If it's all right with all of you, if it's all right, people in the chat, are you all right with having this bearded?
I don't know who this guy is. No, I'm good. Okay.
Oh, you know who I am.
All right.
You friended me. I didn't.
Has it ever occurred that you have tried to be friendly with someone, but the other player got the wrong idea, and it resulted in a scenario that, for lack of a better word, direct communication was out of the question? Just kind of like a miscommunication type thing. What do you think, Aim?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that everybody's had those awkward situations where you're, your intentions are misconstrued. I mean, like I said, I have a flirty PC, so, I'm sure there are times where people may have felt that I was attempting to, both favorably and unfavorably, finding myself in the situation where I'm possibly making someone uncomfortable because they feel like I'm giving them a certain amount of attention that they don't want. And also a situation where they may think that I am giving them attention because I'm interested in something that I'm not. So I definitely think that happens frequently.
I think that happens in a game just as much as it happens in real life.
Right.
People,
yeah.
There isn't a class for it. Not everybody, has an older brother or sister that teaches them, and I think that we need to be careful in how we communicate to people.
Yeah, and I'm also very active in the SCA, and we sometimes joke that it stands for Socially Challenged Americans. And some of the same aspects are present, I think, in the LARP community as well. And I believe it's one of the geek fallacies where we're all friends or we all respect each other, so everybody has to like each other. And then you can get into this weird situation where someone may be exhibiting behaviors that are completely unlikable, but the pressure from the environment creates a stigma where you can't be rude to someone and you can't be awkward with someone because, we have this social community built up. So I definitely think that can be sometimes problematic. But once again, if you remember to be kind but honest, I think that'll save you a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with the kind but honest thing, because that social pressure you were talking about, Amy, has actually caused in a couple of places where I was kind of this sort of backstage whisper effect, where nobody was saying what they wanted to say and what needed to be said. They were just all sort of talking to their friends about it, and it just eventually wound up blowing up and boiling over.
Yeah. Sucks.
And
I hope that everyone involved is okay. That's a rough situation to be in. So.
It's a story for another time. I'll get to that one.
But
we have something about like narcissism and role players.
And I was just going to say something along the lines of maybe not even narcissism, but ego. You know what I mean? We inhabit a world where anybody can show up and be the hero, or be a cavalier and be a knight in shining armor, and they may not always have the charisma naturally to exhibit that characteristic. So, it's this weird situation where someone is trying to play the handsome knight in shining armor or the beautiful fair maiden, and maybe that's not something that's being reciprocated by all the players around them. And it can be frustrating for, the person trying to play it and for the people around them to handle that situation delicately.
Yeah.
That was part of my motivation for creating my Cavalier. I got tired of getting yelled at. We like kind of the way our world works, like we have this player position where that person acts as like a liaison for like an ultimate or a climactic conflict. So we have rising action all weekend, and then there's like a climax that occurs Saturday. And so we have this leader of sorts. We call them a warlord, and it's player controlled, and the players elect who it's going to be from like a specific set of classes. And for like 2 years, the people that were really good at it weren't stepping up, or they were writing weekends, like they were NPCing. So like we just had a couple people that were just like not enthusiastic, or they were like talking down to you, just like a really bad boss at like a crappy job would do. And it like motivated me. I'm like, we deserve better than this. So I created a character that was better than that.
Makes sense.
Although sometimes you have to be careful too, because you fall into the trap of, I love to call it the older player trap, and I say that as an older player. I mean, it's this idea that, well, we are the only people that are capable of handling this situation. And that's not, I mean, I'm also a school teacher. You have to remember that. So every so often, you sort of have to stop everybody and go, all right, let's maybe let a newer person give it a try, or let them step up and be prepared, to back them up if need be.
Always.
Okay, looks like Tara's popping back in. I don't know if so.
Anything else you want to say or add before you go, Sam?
It was lovely to be here, and I'll still be in the chat. So
right. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks, Sam.
No problem.
So I wanted to wait until Tara was here to answer Leela's question. And it is the most volatile of questions.
Lee, come on.
If you don't mind, I would love to read this question.
Go ahead and explain what it means.
About le friend zone and the nice gal / galism. So for those who don't know, Lee Lewis is a very good friend of mine, and he isn't always the most adept at navigating social challenges. but he is probably one of the nicest, most loyal friends I've ever had. He's extremely creative, a great writer, and he's always willing to put himself out there and contribute to any scene or any kind of party or anything. Like, he's the first one to grab the box and help out, and he always has troubles when it comes to affairs of the heart. So I'm sorry, Lee, but hopefully maybe we'll all learn something.
And I'm not laughing at you, Lee. I'm laughing at Sam's reaction to your question.
Sweet
Fancy Moses.
Which one of you girls want to take a stab at it first? Who wants to open up that box?
I'll go. I have a couple things at it. So, I mean, first of all, friend zone. Let's talk about friend zoning.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't like that term because it implies that the person you're referring to owes you more than friendship or is obligated to engage in a romantic relationship with you, even though you're just friends, and that you're there only, you know, for something more than friendship. And so when you're kind of called out on that, it's like, well, what? You're not even like really my friend. Like, what are you really even here for? So I would say like the term itself, or thinking or talking about it in that way is alone just gonna like kind of scare people off. But you know, the whole term, like the whole phrase, like, hey, nice guys finish last. I mean, I'm not gonna say that doesn't happen, like that people don't get noticed just because they're genuinely sweet and nice. I think it might take longer. I think it might actually result in like a more meaningful relationship when it does finally happen. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of like my thoughts on it, but don't think about it as friend zoning or you'll never get involved with that person, because you are in the mentality of, hey, they owe me more because I'm interested. And that, even if you're not expressing that verbally, even if you're not being like, hey, I really want to get with so-and-so and they're totally friend zoning me, like, I think it still shows if you kind of approach it that way. So like, just focus on spending time with them. And especially when it comes to LARPing, like we've been stressing the whole time, communicate, because you don't want to misinterpret an in-character affection for an out-of-character affection. And you want to just like be really upfront and honest and talk about like what these in-character relationships do or do not mean beyond the game, so there isn't any confusion. That's my perspective on it. Amy?
I think my short answer is, if you're only being nice to her because you want to date her or sleep with her or him, then you're not being a nice person. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If your only motivation, if their actual friendship is not good enough for you or your perception of what you deserve, then you're really a jackass, and you can't even call yourself a nice guy.
Women are not sexual vending machines that you put friendship quarters in, and then you get what you press an A7 and you get what you're looking for.
Right.
Unless you're looking for like a kick in the junk, then maybe.
Exactly. As somebody who primarily only dates is like people that I'm friendly with, like like the amount of relationships of a serious nature that I've been in with people that I wasn't friends with before is slim to none. For me, it's like the natural evolution of a meaningful relationship, personally. But I find my friends that are like the same way that they are interacting with their potential, I guess, mates, because they want to have sex with these people, not have a relationship with them. They look at things the wrong way, that their perspective is perpetually skewed. They feel as though that the other person is manipulating them or taking advantage of them, and more often than not, that's not the case. So I guess my obligatory answer to this obligatory question is about honesty and enhanced awareness. Really take your step back from the situation and ask yourself, what is it that you're really looking for, and do you really want that, or do you just have it in your head that that's what you're supposed to pursue, and that that's the person you're supposed to pursue it with? So, I mean, or the insensitive answer, a good friend of mine used to always say, lower the bar to up your average. So, yeah.
Oh my god.
But, I mean, don't swing for the fences. I mean, it's okay to bunt every once in a while.
I would also add to the
Yeah.
conversation while we're talking about like nice guys. For anybody who is familiar with the Marvel universe, or particularly Jessica Jones and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So a lot of nice guys, right? They think they're being Captain America. And now Captain America, he's totally a sweetheart. Like, how can you not love him? Even if you're not like attracted to him, like he's a great guy. He is a nice guy, okay? But a lot of guys think they're Cap, but they're really being Nuke, okay? And Nuke is like the anti-Cap. He thinks he's being super patriotic. He thinks he's being a gentleman, treating women and people in general just like he thinks he's treating them really well, but he's really being a dick. Okay, and so he, in his mind, he's like, I'm so amazing. I'm so patriotic. Aren't I such a gentleman? But in reality, he's just being an asshole. Don't be Nuke. You know, if you're not really Cap, don't think you are. Like, don't pretend you are. I think a lot of people kind of have that problem, and the whole nice guy phrase and syndrome is kind of like becoming more that way, where people think they're being like that, and they're totally not being like that. Perception versus reality.
I think too that, like, you know, failing in a relationship or failing in a crush is a natural part of life. I think every single one of us has been in that situation where you've had unrequited feelings for someone, where someone's had unrequited feelings for you. It's part of being a human being. There are, you know, things that you're not going to be able to get and things that you're not going to be able to have. And sometimes that includes people. People aren't objects, but sometimes the things that you feel like you want and that would be very good for you are things that you're just not going to be able to have in the way that you want. And you know, some of it is just recognizing that about yourself and accepting that about life. It sucks really badly and can be heartbreaking, but everybody goes through it, even Max.
Yeah, I just want to for all the guys. I have to represent Team Guy just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit. Just give this a little bit. I think that we've all had friends that date people that they shouldn't date, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have that one friend, and maybe they put themselves in relationships that aren't always the healthiest. Okay, if you think hard enough. Now, do you think that person preemptively says, those are exactly the kind of characteristics I'm looking for in somebody that I'm dating? No, usually not. So if you are somebody who is currently friend-zoned and you hear the person that you're pursuing communicating qualities that person would like in a partner, and you feel that you exhibit some of those qualities, so there's a huge disconnect, is that more often than not, when people say that they want something or that they want to do something, they don't always really want that, and they don't always do that. I mean, I would want to go to the gym all the time, but I don't. I really like Cheetos. So to a certain extent, what people also communicate, what they're looking for, isn't always what they actually want. And trying to communicate that, I'm not trying to be mean or judgmental, but that's just sometimes crunchy. Sometimes I've seen that happen. So it's anecdotal, but just something to keep rolling around in the back of your head. She's saying that she's looking for a really nice, studious, educated guy to study with, but she really wants to go out and party with a guy who plays in a rock band.
One of my favorite lines from a movie. One of my favorite lines from a movie ever is from Perks of a Wallflower, which was a book, of course, and I can't remember the author. But one of the situations that they're talking about exactly this situation. Why does this girl fall for the wrong guy? And the teacher says, we accept the love we think we deserve. And I think that that's a really powerful statement. And I also think it says a lot about humanity in general. But even particular in the context of a LARP, I mean, if you have someone who's coming to a LARP to escape their everyday life and escape the person that they are, then maybe, you know, they don't necessarily have the best feelings about themselves and they feel like the jerk guy is the only one that they deserve. So you never know, but you can't You can't make her like you or make him like you.
That makes
It's
me
gonna
really
happen. It's
happy
not.
about some of my main character's decisions. I'm just gonna say, like, she's like she's made some quality choices in that regard, which is going to lead us into our next question. And then for the question after this, I'm going to hop off so somebody with some more experience can jump into the seat. But this question, I definitely want to give an answer to. Has any in-game relationship you've ever had changed the entire course of your game? And I'm going to say yes, and not only in a romantic sense, but the friendships and other types of relationships, that especially my main character has experienced have really changed the course of the game. And you guys are here every week, and a lot of you know me, so I'm not going to go into the super long details again. But my character has a couple of central relationships in her life. My friend Callie, I mentioned earlier, plays one of her closest friends who's like a sister to her. So her character is like a very light aligned character, and I think she influences my character to do some good things or things that she might not really consider when she has to make decisions. My character has also been very close to her protector, who's become more of like a father figure to her. So, he has also had a big influence on her life and has definitely encouraged her to like stand up for herself and be more of a combatant. And then lastly, and more related to the relationship category, my character is, of course, heavily interested in her king. And when she met him, he was not her king. She was completely frilly and frivolous, I would even say. And, this character that she met, this king that she met, is very brutal and warlike, and actually is likely possessed by a cruel god himself. And Ciara, my character, was just inspired. She had been immortal. She became mortal. She didn't understand what was going on. And she was like, he awakened my mortal soul. He gave me meaning. He showed me these things. And it's not even really about the relationship. They don't have a relationship other than the fact that she's now in his kingdom and, she like works for him. What the important thing for her, the life. Oh, yeah. Yeah, someone needs to talk to King Baylor about that. No, the important thing really is the way that it changed the character, the way that this presence of this character changed Ciara, the things that this character made her see. And it doesn't even matter that it's like pretty much a one-sided relationship. It's like all about the character's growth and development. And when others ask her, like, how did you go from that to this? Like, characters will come in the game and they're like, oh my gosh, like, last time I saw you, you look completely different. You act completely different. And she will attribute a lot of her changes to the other characters that I've mentioned. Like, they represent these life-changing moments for her. So it's not even 100% about the relationships as it is about like the fact that knowing these other people changed her. They changed her probably more than some of the other experiences and terrors and victories in the game. So yeah, like that's huge. Like for me, that's a big part of what it's about, is allowing those other characters to impact mine. Like, and the fact that all of the examples I mentioned weren't planned. It wasn't like I didn't know Callie before I started LARPing with her. I met her at LARP. And so that relationship, that in and out of game, like our friendship really developed naturally. We didn't like get together and say, hey, we're going to go LARPing next weekend and our characters are totally going to be like sisters. It just like sort of happened over time. And, we actually became close friends in game before we did out of game. And that's a pretty natural pattern, So I would say for all three of those relationships that really deeply affect my character, none of them were at all planned, least of all her romantic interests. Like that was like out of nowhere. People were like, huh? My character was like, huh. And that's, sort of how it happened. So that's not only been something that's happened to my character a lot. It's something that is not necessarily always romantic. And it's something that is a really important part of role playing for me. What do you guys think?
I had an example that actually involves one of Amy's characters. I feel that one of her relationships, it wasn't romantic though, so I don't know if it counts. Her relationship with a long-standing, very important NPC in an end of the world storyline, his name was Altar Sharice. She trusted in him because she had known him for years, like decades, like a decade at the time in that storyline. And not just because she knew him out of game, but because she went on adventures with him. She had dinner with him. They broke bread together and they had meaningful conversations. They'd been through a lot together. And she had absolute faith that he would never turn against the institution that was like our player created, like our player society, like the thing that unites all of our players. So there were these stories and there was these modules going on where he was out in the frontiers in the desert, and he's getting all these people together that were eventually going to be the instruments that would sound and cause the end of the world storyline. And sure enough, after it was like a 2-year plot for a while, like where it was slowly building up, and we didn't know. We had no clue if he was gonna drop down the hammer. But that NPC, he united all those factions, and he never actually ended up turning against that PC organization, that primary player organization. And I think that when in our game we have a lot of player decisions, we vote on things. So we were at these meetings every month, and like it would come up every month, and we'd have to vote. Like, do we turn against him? Do we make him an outlaw? Do we criminalize him? And I remember like real speeches with tears coming out of Amy's character's like eyes, like impassionately moving speeches. And like everybody was buying into the moment and that emotion. And I feel that those conversations steered the game and the plot a different way. So that relationship that she had with that NPC was so meaningful, so powerful, that even confronted with evidence that it could be to the contrary, she believed in him and like dissuaded others from turning against him.
That's still true. I still, that character still absolutely believes in that NPC, and seems like maybe that's actually turning out to be the case. But my immediate response to this question was, yeah, every single relationship I've ever had has changed the entire course of my game. I mean, when we sit around and we're telling our, no crap, there I was stories, you're mentioning plot lines and you're mentioning mechanics and things like that, but ultimately what you're talking about are the people going out on that trail with you. When you mess up and you shoot your buddy in the head, you know what I mean? Like that's that storyline that you're telling, you know what I mean? So every in-game relationship I've ever had has changed the entire course of my game, because I wouldn't be the character that I am today without it. And I wouldn't be the person that I am today without having gone through those situations. So that's my very esoteric answer to that question.
Well, and kind of in addition to that, like when Max was describing how, your character was really emotional and moved to tears, I think that reminds me of, the various like different types of love that you could explore as a character, not just necessarily romantic. Oh my gosh, come on.
I read Nina's question. I'm sorry. No, I read Nina's question. I'm sorry.
Oh. Tara, I'm with you. Let's ignore Matt.
Okay. You can mute him. Everyone, if you need to mute him, just press
I'm so sorry.
But anyway,
it's so funny.
Anyway, so my character just doesn't have like a romantic interest in her king. It's like when she talks about him, when she delivers speeches for the kingdom, she describes like her different types of loyalty. It's not just a romantic thing. It's like, I believe in his mission, I believe in our people. And it actually really allows me to explore like different types of loyalty that I don't have in real life. And I think I'm probably not the only American that feels that way, of like exploring how cool it is to like be in this like fantasy monarchy and like feel this great allegiance to my team or my side. Because hey, if you have a good monarch, that's great. If you have a really shitty one, then well, that sucks. But yeah, like it's kind of allowed me to explore that and the various facets of that loyalty that my character experiences. But we'll move on to Nina's question. Max, go ahead.
So
Take it
good.
away.
It's so good. Have you ever met a person
Now I see why you're laughing.
developed a crush and then re-met them out of game and was like disappointed?
Yeah,
LOL.
when I first met Max.
Oh.
Sorry. I'm a walking disappointment. It's happened to me more than once. I'm not going to tell any stories because people will know who they were. But yeah, when people are playing their characters, really good role players, they act differently. It's kind of like when you have company over, or you're at church, or you're at some place where you're on. Sometimes you're not always on, and you act differently, and it doesn't click the same way. But yeah.
That's a great question. I love how you phrased it, Nina. That's the best part. I could just like hear you saying the question, having met you. Like,
I just imagine like that quote unquote knight in shining armor. You know what I mean? And like it's like he's coming down the field and the sun's glistening off the armor, and then you guys meet at Starbucks or the Olive Garden, and they're dressed like shit.
Or
you know, like shirt
asshole, like he lets the door fall on your face, and yeah.
Like, a pirate with the bandana, and then they take it off, and they're bald, and not like in a good way. You know, and you're just like, ooh, that's a different look. Yeah. So
one time, I had a situation where someone was playing this like unique, interesting character. And then I realized they weren't playing a character. That's just how they always acted and dressed. And I was like, help me!
Oh my God. Like you thought it was like an extreme mannerism, and then
yeah, I was like, wow, she's such a good role player. This is so great.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that isn't me.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, that would have been really awkward.
Sorry, Tara.
Yeah, I didn't develop a crush on you. They meet you at a game. Sorry, Tara.
Yeah, actually, it was Nina.
I didn't mean that. I meant like you thought they were role playing, and then they were just actually weird. Yeah, I hope. That's
I
why
think
I was
we're
like,
all
I hope
guilty of that.
A little bit. Like I've met people like out of game because my character wears a mask, and they're like, "Whoa, you look so weird." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, especially when I'm wearing my contacts or like you know the mask on. I'm like, did you think that like I wear that every day and that's how I go to work and like drive my car? No, you know, or they think it's weird because like my character talks in a high voice and like I have a not high voice all the time. And yeah, I really find it weird when like the in-game expectations that are carried out of game are about like the most ridiculous traits. And I guess I didn't really notice it until it started happening to me. Like, do you really think that I wear a mask all the time? Come on. You know, and people are just like surprised by that. I mean, I guess it's like a compliment to the costume or the role play, but it's just like, yeah, wear the mask all the time, in the shower, walking the dog, driving to work, all the time.
I think accents do that sometimes. If you hear someone talk with an accent regularly enough, especially if they're like used to doing it, you know, then all of a sudden you hear them out of game and they're not, their intonations are off or their you know, their dialect is off, and it can be very disconcerting.
All right, anybody else on this brilliant question?
One of the things I've found perturbing similarly that way is that sometimes people that you meet through that way are like, that's all they want to talk about. Like, there's nothing else there. And,
it's like they get together every Tuesday at 7:30 and all they'll talk about is LARP. I mean, what?
My advice to any prospective daters or people courting one another is if somebody wants to have conversations with you not at the game, try to have, even if it's just for 15 minutes, talk about something that isn't the game and see if there's a meaningful connection or if you just have like a new playmate.
That's good advice. There we go. So
I've never heard of this.
Okay,
Am
so
I uncultured?
Okay, I'll give an intro, but then like I'm willing to be kicked out of the chat here to let somebody else come in and talk if they have more experience with this, because I know what it is, but it's nothing I've ever done. So
there was
Ars
a recorrect
Armandi,
that it was Ars Armandi, yeah.
Yeah. So Ars Armandi is I'm gonna post a link right here, and I'm actually just gonna
I'm
read
Googling
it.
it right
Okay. I'm gonna actually just read from the thing because the link that I posted to is by Lizzie Stark, who is an awesome authority on LARP, and everyone should read her. But I'm gonna actually just read from her page. She says, Ars Armandi is a Nordic mechanic for simulating romance or sex in LARP. The full mechanic permits players to touch permitted zones such as arms, shoulders, sternum, upper back, neck, below the ears, using permitted body parts. So it's pretty much like representative of sex. And it's something I've seen people do. It's nothing I've done. The only thing that really like makes me think it isn't an awesome mechanic is that like I saw people doing this like in a hallway at a LARP before, and like at a game I knew what it was, but I'm like, does that mean you're having sex in the hallway? Would your characters really be doing it in the hallway? Like, and should my character be reacting to you doing it in the hallway? Because a very, very innocent character, like, what are they doing? Oh my god, you know, like, so it just made things awkward for me as the observer because I wasn't sure if that's simulated. Like, so you out there want to hop in to the conversation instead of me, I'll hop out because, like I said, I don't have
Nordic
a lot of
experience
personal
out of all three of us.
That's not good.
Yeah, let's get Tina back.
There are,
but if anyone
I can understand the idea of like you can be intimate without actually being intimate. Like there are things you can do, touch, and say that, or even in public view, like the way that you touch someone's hand, or like, and the idea that there are some zones that people don't normally touch, and touching them. And I like the idea of introducing touching like an area not with my hand, like if like the idea of like rubbing like my forearm or some other, like I think that that's a good way to represent it if you're trying to truly capture that experience. I think that's very creative, but I mean, I guess I haven't been put in a situation where I felt the need to like rub my forearm up against, you know, Amy's under ear. Like that's just weird.
Yeah, I think like my preference, even if I were a little bit more familiar, you know, with experiencing this, my personal preference and my level of comfortability would actually lean more towards, especially for a campaign LARP, discussing like, oh, and this is what happened, or writing out a scene with a really suggestive fade to black, and then this is what happened. Like I'm way more comfortable with like writing that kind of thing than playing out like any of those representative motions. Like some people, like I mentioned before, are comfortable with like going into a room and making all sorts of sound effects. I don't think I could like do that in seriousness. Like even if I was really comfortable with it, I just think I would giggle. But like but I mean, in terms of that kind of thing, like would I be comfortable writing that scene? I don't know. Like it would feel a little strange to me because I LARP the character, like I actually play the character, and they probably look physically like me, so that would weird me out. But as far as like writing collaboratively, you know, that doesn't bother me at all. I'd feel comfortable doing that. Other people might feel super comfortable with Ars Armandi, but would never write a sex scene with somebody else. So it probably depends on the person.
It's kind of a weird gray zone almost, you know. It's sort of, I can understand the idea that it's sort of bridging the gap between full-on physical contact and just keeping it strictly verbal, or, you know, role playing and things like that. But you know, it almost makes me, I think I'd have to see it in action, which sounds a little weird, but like I would have to see how somebody's representing those things, because my initial thought was, well, why do you need that if you're going to engage in physical contact with someone? You know, I mean, obviously not fully engage in physical contact in the middle of a hallway at a LARP, but if you're gonna
you need to be able to represent it so that when someone looks at it, they know it's just weird.
Right.
Like,
and if you're a good role player,
what I mean,
like kind of sex club or something, like what the hell?
Also, if
right,
you're a
exactly,
good role player, like yeah, you know, like I think the whole point of that isn't really about other people seeing it. It's about the experience between the two characters. If you're doing it to represent it to other people, unless you like actually want them like looking in on what you're doing, you know, they're probably missing the point of it. I think there are definitely other ways that you could represent like our characters totally did it. Like you could say, if your character would say like totally did it, you know? I mean, I don't know. There are probably 100 different ways you could represent that without any kind of physical contact. I think my impression is that it's something, whether the characters are doing this in public or private, that is about between, you know, those two characters. And yeah, I mean, that's my thought on it. If anybody else in the chat has more experience with this mechanic or would like to talk more about it.
Not with sex.
Yes, with the mechanic. Then, you know, you're welcome to jump in. I'm just kind of trying to look at the chat here and see if anyone else wanted to jump in. Anyone? I was actually trying to find a video.
Yeah,
I thought there was.
It sounds like a really interesting mechanic. I would be curious to see a video of it and to see how it's played out. But yeah, I have all the same questions. There is a video of it
actually here. Hang on.
I'll send you some links.
Oh my god!
Some videos for you.
Here is a legitimate link.
Gee, thanks, Max.
The mechanics.
Oh god, yes.
I'll just let me just randomly click on any link Max sends.
Oh my god!
Like what? Yeah, exactly. Like what if like I don't know the rules and like I stretch in a weird way? Am I like touching myself in front of everybody?
Look at the video. It is not a porn video. It is an actual demonstration of the mechanic, and it is by Sarah Lynn Bowman, who is. Hey, it is not boring. It's for real. And actually, like, this is how I was first familiarized with it because I saw this a long time ago. And then I noticed two people doing this at a LARP. I went and, yeah, doing it in the hallway. So, cool.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, a quick look at that video does actually give it an air of intimacy. I mean, I jumped around and there was at like 20 minutes, there was a pic of two people caressing each other's hands. And that made me a little uncomfortable for that 30 seconds of video that I was watching because it obviously was communicating an extremely intimate scene between two people, which leads me to Tara's question. Am I supposed to believe that these two people are having sex in front of my character? And then what do I do with that? You know what I mean? Is it a voyeur situation or is it an exhibition situation?
I wouldn't personally really feel comfortable with it. Not only because of like my out of game limits and, you know, status being with somebody else, but I don't know. For me, I don't think it would adequately communicate that. And I feel like for me, a more accurate and safer way would be to write that out. But that's just my preference. Like I'm a writer person, you know, I LARP too, but it just wouldn't feel right for me. Next question.
Jess with another great question. Thanks, Jess. You're like the little suck up in the front row. I love it. Great questions. We're loving it. Yeah. Thank you. Have you ever had to police players because of a relationship blow up?
I have.
Question
as a staff member. Like there was some relationship drama, and you know, my role in that was actually kind of corralling the other PCs away from that and giving them something else to do so that it didn't escalate the situation. But yeah, like there was a conflict that happened, and it just happened to be about a relationship. Honestly, like it could have been an argument about anything that, you know, two people were having out of game that just kind of blew up and spilled over into game and affected people. But yeah, I mean, in that situation, like a staff member handled the players in question, and I went ahead and gave the other PCs something else to focus on so that it didn't become worse and disrupt the game further. How about you guys?
I can't.
I've never had a relationship blow up. All of my relationships have ended perfectly.
Yeah, but have you ever seen that happen in game, or like were you ever running a game where that's?
Yeah, I mean, Yeah. I've done some policing after a breakup.
Yeah, Dan and I, or Max and I are still friends. But no, as far as policing players because of relationship blow up, I think the closest that I've ever had to come as a game administrator, I can't recall off the top of my head any situations where we actually had to step in and separate a situation or do what you did, Tara, and move a group of players away. There have definitely been some situations where we knew going into the weekend that it had been an awkward situation or a bad breakup, and we had sort of put out the word, hey, keep an eye out. This was a bad situation, that kind of thing. There was an incident just a few weekends ago where I noticed one player really being kind of aggressive towards his girlfriend, or what I thought was his girlfriend at the time, and like verbally aggressive and interrogating her, and found out that they had recently broken up. So it was definitely the situation of, do we put a stop to that? Do I keep, at what point do I get involved? I mean, she's holding her own right now, but is she doing that because she's uncomfortable with the situation? It's a really, it can really be a delicate balance. You definitely don't want to create drama in policing a situation like that, but you also don't want to create an environment in which somebody feels unsafe or feels like they can't approach you about in-game situation. But I feel like most of the situations that we've had to deal with were out-of-game situations that stayed more or less out of game. People were mature enough or intelligent enough or just had been told enough times to just stay away from each other, and have had that situation. I can't recall off the top of my head any active breakups happening like in the middle.
That would be terrifying.
I mean, play. Yeah.
I remember part of that issue I think we're talking about, but we policed it from the idea that like we're a group of concerned friends, not like as administrators. Like like the instance with a person we'll call Dick and a girl we'll call Macy, where like an ex-boyfriend was like yelling from the woods at those two people that were like pretty much making out on a picnic table, and like, that's it, and like I thought that those two guys were gonna fight each other, and it wouldn't be totally like there would be probably blood involved, or like maybe one of them has a knife that we didn't see, who knows what could happen, you know what I mean? So or like someone's tires would get slashed or something like that. But that's
the
always,
other
that's
thing
like
I want to
one
say
in like
to
20
that,
years. So.
as a former staff member of a game, is you have to also be sensitive to people who are going through difficult times, including breakups. For example, like if you're running a campaign game and you have two players and they break up, and then what'll commonly happen is one will decide, hey, like I'm not going to come to the game for a few months. As somebody writing plot or staffing the game, you need to think like, do I really want to like punish them by like taking plot away or whatever because of their inactivity? You have to think like they're being super mature by, giving some space to the other person. And you have to be really delicate about if or how you approach that. But it's definitely something to consider. Like you don't want to punish someone because they didn't show up because they decided to create less drama. So, there's always that. And, I think like give it some time and then reach out to them and be like, hey, I really miss seeing you at game. I was just wondering if you were going to come back. We've got a lot of exciting stuff going on. Like, and they're not obligated to tell you like we broke up and he got custody of the game, or something like that. But you'll probably find out like what's up and whether they'll be back, and they'll probably be happy that you miss them. So
yeah, creating that sense of community and supportive community where you're not sort of picking a side or taking a side. I mean, personally, you can absolutely pick a side or take a side, but from an administrative standpoint,
and like the whole breakup thing, like that happens a lot. Like two will break up and like they'll have to decide like who gets custody of the game if they're not going well, basically. If they can't stay friends, and that happens a lot. And as a LARP community, like everybody else just kind of has to respect and accept that because it happens and it sucks, but that's what happens when you're in any kind of community. Like if anyone does like theater or sports or anything like that, like that just, it's kind of the nature of being in a social club. All right, so
Yeah, we always joke about who gets who in the breakup. Yeah, like where like all the friends are like children.
I
So
haven't read this, but here we
Yeah.
go.
You have to
Have
get
you ever been
custody.
afraid of someone as a result of a miscommunication? Additionally, have you panicked and tried to do a communication lockdown even though it wasn't necessary in the end?
Like physically afraid someone was gonna come after you. I'm assuming from a relationship standpoint. I'm not sure. I think I've been emotionally afraid of situations that I've heard of happening, you know, people being upset with you or people being angry at you. But physically, I don't usually get afraid. I tend to figure if somebody really wanted to come after me, then I'm going to try and do my best to be a scrapper and get them back. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a small person, but like, I'm going to make them work
LARP
for
is
it as
like
much
my
as I
safe
can, you know?
place, really. Like, if somebody wants to threaten me or make me feel unsafe at LARP, like even if it's not my home LARP, like I'm usually there with friends, like that's probably like the worst possible scenario for them because I'm there with people who would like defend me out of game too. So no, like LARP makes me feel safer and more confident in general, but specifically because I'm there with like a community that supports me. So I have not ever felt like real fear at a LARP. See, communication lockdown. No, like LARP also makes me a better communicator. So I think just the opposite. You know, it teaches me how to deal with situations better and handle situations better. So I have not personally had that.
I have never been afraid ever. Not afraid of nothing. Other than you guys not liking me. But yeah, I mean, miscommunications happen all the time. I feel that my time as a LARPer has enhanced my empathic ability to near superpower levels. But my suggestion to you would be get like a neutral third party to arbitrate if this even like is it worth saving? You know what I mean? Like, how much energy is it worth investing in making it so that this person and you feel comfortable around each other? Eventually, there's a sunken cost value. You like stop.
Mm-hmm.
Like this person obviously is going to keep doing it more than likely. We're doing it to someone else, and this is probably the worst advice ever. But just wait it out. He'll just creep on someone else.
Yeah, and you know, if you
You know
feel
what I mean?
threatened, you know,
And
hopefully you could feel
that's
like
what I
you
would
can
do.
go to your game staff and let them know what's going on or let them know of a potential situation. One other thing I wanted to mention that I've seen people do after a breakup is, or even like a friend breakup, like if you're super close friends with someone and something bad happened and you had a falling out, is they play a different character or they go NPC side for a while if they're usually PCs, and that usually helps the situation a lot. And you know, from the staff perspective, if someone reaches out to you and they're like, hey, this horrible thing happened, I don't really feel comfortable playing this PC, I'm going to pull them out of the game for a few months and then maybe I'll play again, like, you know, as that character in a few months. That's great too. Like, communicate with staff, let them know, and you know, then you won't really like be, you know, punished for not playing that character or anything like that. All right, anything else on this question?
The follow up to this question, yeah, I was going to say there was a follow up about like blocking someone on Facebook or something like that. I think that uh, ultimately every player gets to decide for themselves where they feel safe. And if they're having interactions with someone either at the game or even online, which you could see as an extension of a shared game space, they have the right to protect themselves in whatever manner they need to. I mean, nobody, you know, my father-in-law always says a phone has no obligation to be picked. A ringing phone has no obligation to be picked up. Just because someone wants to communicate with you doesn't mean that you have to communicate back with them, especially if there's been a situation in which you feel unsafe. Whether you want to say it's a rational fear or not, if you are feeling fearful in a situation emotionally, psychologically, however you want to look at it, you have the right to feel that way and you have the right to take whatever actions you need to take to protect yourself. And if that means cutting down communication or shutting down communication, then that's totally within your right as a human being to protect yourself. where I would start to look askance is if I then, like, let's say it was me and I had to block someone. I then wanted to take it to the next level and then went to my game administration and require them to also cut off and block this individual because of a miscommunication issue or because of an uncomfortable emotional situation or relationship situation. But I see we have a question from Jess that talks about rape allegations. That's a little bit different for me. I think we've been fortunate enough that, to the best of my knowledge, we've never had a specific rape allegation brought to us, but we definitely have had situations in which female players have expressed that specific male players have been making them uncomfortable. It's a really hard situation to do because you never want to be in a situation where you're victim blaming at all. However, there are times, particularly within a LARP context, that some of the interactions, it is possible that some of those interactions could be misconstrued by one party or the other. And I don't want to get jumped all over that I'm victim blaming or I'm being a rape apologist or anything like that. But, you know, I can see how, especially within a role-playing scenario, there are situations in which these things are happening. I would say it would behoove any administrator to look at the balance of power and to see what's happening. And, you know, when you start to get the same story being repeated a couple times with allegations against the same individual, you know, you always have to look into it and you always have to take it seriously. But, you know, just like with the police, I mean, police have a hard time proving these things too. So it can be really uncomfortable. And I think I said a lot and didn't actually answer the question at all.
From a staff perspective,
No, you answered it.
you know, I also have not had to deal with this as a staff member of a game, but you definitely need to consider the safety of your players above everything, really. Like, that's your primary thing. So if your player is feeling unsafe because their rapist is at the game, then that's something that you have to address. You know, and you have to consider not only the safety of your players, but the legal ramifications and all the other things that go into that. You know, you really just can't ask somebody to be in the same space as somebody that has done that to them. Additionally, like, you know, it's like you can't punish the victim for what happened and be like, well, if you're not comfortable with that person, then don't come to the game. Like, then it's like even more of a trauma than they've already gone through because you're removing them from a place where they probably otherwise find a lot of support. So that's definitely a lot to consider. And I would also say, don't be quiet about it, like, as best as you legally can as a staff member. If that's being talked about and whispered about, talk with the victim and see what that person does or doesn't want to say. And if they're okay with you addressing it, then address it. If it's never happened at your game, awesome. It's time to make a policy about what kind of behavior is and is not acceptable. And it should absolutely be on your website that certain behaviors are not at all tolerated. If you don't have it on your website, then you should have it on there so that it's really clear, especially if you have minors at your game and their parents are looking at your website and already like weirded out about what this is and what goes on here. Another point I want to make is a kind of related point about scenarios that happen in game. So abuse, rape, plot that revolves around those things. Different games have different policies on whether or not that kind of thing is acceptable to run in game, how it's portrayed, how it's role played, and whether or not it's even allowed. I think it's best to clear up confusion and potential traumatic triggers for everyone if you just explain that on your game site, explain it on the rules, be really clear about what is and is not acceptable, because otherwise you're going to end up with a bunch of people like feeling really uncomfortable, people really hurt, people upset, and then a whole bunch of other people being like, oh my gosh, then we have to have trigger warnings and everything, and it's going to be this big culture war in a little game. And you can just prevent a lot of that by just stating it on your website, by being clear about it. And then if people don't want to experience a traumatic situation and your game, you know, portrays those, then they'll know that this is maybe not a good fit for them. And, you know, if they are the kind of person that doesn't like to play in an environment with trigger warnings or some out-of-game explanation about what might happen in a scene, then they'll know by reading the description on your site that is your policy, and maybe they should find a game that's a little bit less considerate of those things. So overall, just be clear in all of your materials on your website and in your community, and consider who you have on your staff, because the people on your staff are also going to kind of give the impression as to whether or not that sort of behavior is tolerated. If your staff is all guys, okay, all guys obviously are not rapists, but if your staff are all guys, then you may have less women feeling comfortable talking to them or even participating in the game. So make sure that you have people on your staff that your entire player base is going to feel comfortable talking to. Just make sure there are people there that, even if they don't have any kind of like professional experience dealing with those who have been through traumatic experiences, are at least sensitive to those matters and have the resources or the knowledge to point them in the right direction. And if this happens at your game, like, handle it, make sure that you support the victim and make sure that they are able to contact the police right away, and let everyone know that you take it really seriously. I know that there are a lot of comments in here. I haven't read them. I will do so, but I just kind of wanted to give my take on how I think that should be handled. Max, do you have anything else to add?
It's a very serious word. It carries a lot of weight, and it should be treated very seriously. Some of the scenarios that I have been exposed to were never anywhere near that spectrum. So thank God for that. Because yes, it's a game, yes, it's a business, but for me, it's a social club. It's an extension of almost like a family. And if anything like that happened to anybody in my family, including my family at the game, I don't know what I would do. But that aside, maybe this could be an interesting topic. What do you do with somebody who's making somebody uncomfortable? Like we'll say a classic situation, a guy who's, too overly attentive to a female. It's making her uncomfortable. He's super into her just because that's usually the scenario. But the gentleman is, I don't know how to say it without being insensitive, is who's autistic or on a spectrum or isn't. It's hard to explain those things to that person. I feel like that's been happening to me at some of my games. What do you guys think? How do you think it should be handled?
Well, before I answer that, I just wanted to say the other thing too about rape, especially from an in-game perspective, it's crappy writing. If your default to induce terror in your players or fear in your players or psychological trauma in your players is to go to something so obviously unsettling, you need to be a better writer. But as far as we've actually had to deal with this situation before over the years. Mr. Grumps has been around almost 20 years, and we've definitely had to deal with this situation before. Whenever possible, I think we try to engage friends of the guy. You know what I mean? If you can have somebody who can sort of, dude, you gotta, yeah, you know what I mean? Dude, your buddy's really getting out of hand here. You know what I mean? Can you maybe, tell him to back off or something like that? You know what I mean? Just because sometimes that can come across a lot better, if it's one of your friends who are like, dude, I just don't think she's into you, or honey, I just don't think he's into you. You know what I mean? You can hopefully get them to back off a little bit better, a little bit easier than sort of coming down from administration and telling someone you're awkward and nobody likes you. So I think that if you can sort of do it, once again, that sort of be kind, but be honest, if you can sort of redirect it from a more positive standpoint.
I'm sorry, I just jumped in here.
I hit the okay button for you to actually go on camera.
All right, as someone who actually is on that spectrum and has this weird sort of social blind spot where I don't realize how awful I've been until after when I'm thinking about it. I can't quite realize in the moment sometimes, how I'm coming off to someone. It's really important for me, at least, to have someone who can like be kind of, not forceful about it, but can kind of sort of take me aside and go, look, you're doing this. We need you to not do this. This is freaking people out. Please stop. And usually if there's someone who can take me aside and explain that in sort of a gentle way, in a way that, makes it clear that they're not like, taking me to task, but is going, look, we really just want everybody to sort of, we want everybody to sort of, be able to enjoy themselves, and you doing this is freaking people out, then usually, I'm not sure about other people. I'm not sure about people further down the spectrum. I think I'm vaguely high functioning. But usually I'll apologize profusely. I'll be awkward around that person because, I don't want to freak them out again, but I'll back down. If you talk to someone about what they're doing because they don't realize it, because they're on that spectrum or whatever, because they have that sort of behavioral disconnect, usually all they need to do is know they have that behavioral disconnect. And I know a lot of the people who have this sort of social disorder are very aware that sometimes they come off as creepers, and they don't want to do that. Nobody wants to be that person. So
yeah, I think, having had like a few interactions like that in game, I think like when I don't know someone and I'm not comfortable with them, especially if they're physically, look like they're a bit tougher than me, I feel really super uncomfortable being like, hey, you're making me uncomfortable. And I would feel very comfortable going to staff and saying like, hey, this person's making me uncomfortable, or hey, I've noticed that this person's being a little intense and they're making another player feel uncomfortable. And then, it's like, it's their job to pretty much like handle that situation. But becoming more comfortable with players who are on the spectrum, now I do feel like I can say, hey, you're being a little intense about this, and, you need to just dial it back a bit. And now I know that that's okay and like expected. Like, Sam, now that you've told me that, I mean, we're already friends, but like now that you've told me that, like if I were LARPing with you and I observed that, I would feel, or felt that, I would feel completely comfortable just being straight up about that and saying like, hey, like you're being too intense or whatever, like back off a bit.
This is actually intervention.
Just lay off the caffeine, stop jumping into the feed at random points, spread your no volume control BS.
I think another interesting aspect, not necessarily individuals who might be on the spectrum, but it occurs to me as I age a little bit in the LARP. I started when I was 10, so, it's only been a few years. But, I think that age-related hitting on people can definitely be a factor too. I mean, as you get older or you have newer players coming in who are very young, I think that's another situation that definitely needs to be handled delicately, because we definitely have individuals in our game, who still think they're in their early 20s. And I sometimes am guilty of it as well. And, you might be reacting to someone who is also in their early 20s or, and you're giving off a creeper vibe, you know what I mean? So that's definitely something that needs to be dealt with. Or, we've had the other side of the coin too. We've had people come in who maybe are 16 or 17. And, some of our players are looking at them and going, oh my God, it's illegal for me to even consider them. You know what I mean? So I think that's another. Sometimes it does. But I think that's another aspect of that sort of unwanted attention that we don't often talk about. But that can definitely be a little difficult. A little difficult to handle. I mean, nobody wants to feel like they're the dirty old man. And you certainly don't want to go up and tell one of your players who's been playing for 15 years that, hey, dude, you're kind of creeping somebody out.
I've noticed a lot of...
I think
I've noticed a lot of like
just another
players will also, I mean, everyone's invested in their community, so players will also jump in and help people out. I was in a situation in the last year where someone was being a little creepy, and like I was like, I think it's in game, and like my good friend is standing here next to me. So I mean, like, there's only so creeped out I can feel because like what's gonna happen like here now, you know? And it started to go a little over the line, and he looked at me like, "Is it time for me to like say something?" And I looked at him like, "Yeah, it's about getting there." And then like the situation de-escalated, but it was really helpful to be there with a friend who I know would have my back, you know. And that's also like one reason why I love to game with my friends and like go into new LARPs with my friends, because hey, there are creepers and stuff, and I don't want that to happen, and I don't want that to happen to my friends either.
It just takes the edge off to have people have your back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of the ideas about this very muddled situation that enter my head is, one, I hate whenever I do something or I see something being done that makes my friend have to be an administrator. It sucks. Nobody likes to police their friends. It sucks a lot. So anytime something like that goes on, I hate it. But when they're not like to the nth degree that we talk about, where it's physically touching, it's horrible. Maybe I politically should probably shut my mouth, but like, I am of this perception, maybe because I am a male, that certain attractive women kind of have a celebrity status where they get used to being approached by people all the time asking for autographs. So they kind of have ways to handle that situation, or like they're used to it to a certain degree, so they're not as affected by it. And when you transport that to our own little microcosm, sometimes those people that are a 6 in the outside world are a 9 in our game, and they're getting this attention, and they're not used to dealing with it, and that can have different responses. But again, I'm not saying what way is right or what way is wrong. I'm just trying to throw these ideas out just so that we're enhancing our awareness, or maybe thinking about it in a different way. That sometimes, again, maybe this is horrible, but like when I see something like that going on, I kind of feel like I need to like step in and tell this guy to shut up, or I'm gonna like do something bad to you, because I am hardwired to be like protective, which is also a negative characteristic. I think that my feminist
just
friends
have to
tell
wait
me
for the
shouldn't
nod.
have. I don't know, but at the end of the day, I hate. Yeah, I
You
hate
just have
when
to
stuff
wait
like
for
that
the
happens,
nod,
and
Max.
for a
Like,
lot of
if,
reasons.
like, you
Just
and I are
get your
friends.
visa stamped, and then toxic masculinity ahoy.
No, like you and I are friends. So if right,
As long as you're protecting
if
me
we were
because
at
I'm
a
your
game
friend
together,
and not
if we
because
were
I'm
at
a
a game
girl,
together and
it's not an
somebody made
issue.
me uncomfortable, and you happened to be the friend that was there with me, I would obviously feel comfortable telling you, like, hey, like this is weirding me out. Like, don't jump in and intervene. But if I give you the nod and I'm like, this guy's being a creeper, like, yo, that means like, please step in and help me out, you know? And I know you would. So like, I would just say, don't assume that it's like your duty to step in and like fix the situation, but please be there and like totally be ready to handle the situation. Yeah, that's huge.
It's like when you're playing a video game online and like you like click the PvP enabled flag, and I just like instantly charge your character.
People like you are why I only play PvE.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but I don't know, like that for me personally, that makes me feel more comfortable when I have friends of, you know, no matter how they identify gender wise, that are there to back me up and help me out. And I appreciated in the scenario I described, I really appreciated like the fact that this friend waited until I was like, all right, this is getting weird. I mean, like, and then I know once that switch is flipped, it's like whatever. But you know, that's really like the key to it. Just wait until they ask.
Dominic asked an interesting question. It said, "How do you think a situation should be handled between two people who run a LARP and get a divorce and no longer want to be in business with each other? Should the game break up? Should one person be forced out?" I think that anytime you interact with divorce and business, it's ugly, and divorce in general is horrible, and I don't wish it on anybody. But sometimes you create something like a game, and it's larger than yourself. sometimes you create a game and it's really only about yourself and all the players are just extra characters. So I guess it depends the kind of game you run, the kind of LARP you run. But for myself and Amy, our home game at Mystic Realms, it's a family, it's a social club. We've seen people come and go. Thank God, knock on wood. Tony and Bobby are still doing great. I mean, they were on Marriage Ref,
They were great.
which was one of the funniest episodes. And they did side with Bobby. Bobby was right. She got the billboard for 1 year. And we all knew Bobby was right. I mean, if you've talked to her for 5 minutes, you know she's right. But I guess the best way is for them to talk to each other and ask, you know, what is it really about? I would probably offer a solution for a third party or a senior player or someone who's on staff to try to buy the rights to the game, get some kind of lump sum payout, if there is even any a payout money profit. I mean, LARPs aren't always that profitable. And then splitting that, and then just if at some point they want to, when things cool down, they want to be back involved, leaving a clause for them.
I would say it's not even necessarily a question about divorce, although that sadly relates nicely to our topic of relationships and romance and LARP. But just kind of any business partnership or any running of the game, like sometimes for whatever reason, like the game will end. You know, not every game will run for 20 years. Some games will, and it'll be awesome. And some games will change ownership, and that can work out. And sometimes it's just time to end a game. And that can be because, you know, staff is exhausted. It can be because, you know, the two people running it don't get along anymore. They grew apart, or, you know, their time is just over. Or it could be because they were married and they're getting divorced and they want to end all dealings with each other. And I think you would just need to take an honest look at, you know, why are we talking about ending the game or passing the game off to somebody else, you know? And as the game owner, each person should hopefully look at it and say, like, is my heart really still in this? And what is best for the community? Like, almost like if the LARP is your kid, you know, like, or like your dog or something, like, you know, a family member that you are talking about being really affected by the end of that relationship. What's going to be best for them? You know, do we drag this out just to like give the illusion of happiness and still try to run the game together? Does one of us kind of have full custody of it? How does it work there? And so just kind of like in all of your dealings when you're ending the relationship, you want to be really honest about what's best for that that third party as well. And if you are feeling like you want to hold on to the game or fight over the game, also ask yourself why. Like, is it a selfish reason that I still want to run and own this game? Am I doing it because the other party is more invested and I want to keep it from them, or like hold that against them? You know, so think about it and ask yourself why. And also think about who else in the community would want to step up and run it. That would be my advice. Anybody else have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I'd go to, if you really don't want to be, if you've had this divorce and you don't want to be in business with each other and that sort of thing, I'd say go to members in the community who you'd trust with the direction of the game and say, look, we don't want to be near each other right now, but we don't want to break up the game. Or we don't want everybody else to sort of, we don't want this to implode. Honestly, if it's that acrimonious where you're like, I don't want to deal with this other person ever, I don't want to be in business with this other person ever, I don't suggest you hold on to the game, because there might be, you know, some lingering venom around that. I'd suggest at that point you just try your best to find someone who's best for the game and have them continue on, and maybe come back when you know you don't have the same residual stuff. I don't know. I'd imagine I'd have to actually be in a relationship to ever contemplate marriage and divorce and all that sort of thing, but just sort of.
I'm fairly certain that this happened. I mean, probably. I'm fairly certain this happened at least over 20 years ago with some of the LARPs in New Jersey, North Jersey. I feel like I've heard the story of same exact situation happening. Couple running one of the LARPs, they got divorced, the LARP dissolved. Something to remember is depending on the situation and whether or not you have proprietary rules and things like that. If you have a group of people who are capable of running a LARP once, then in theory, they should be capable of starting something similar again if there's a legal reason to dissolve the one corporation and move on from that. I mean, it gets a little sticky if you've got copyrighted rules and trademarks and things like that. But in my understanding is that historically, at least in New Jersey, when these things have dissolved, some of the people involved have gone on to start their own LARPs, a different LARP, just a few years later.
To address your follow-up, if they both want to be there but they don't want the other person there, I think that you should run a plot around it and have like some PvP climactic night or some kind of like LARP academic decathlon. No holds barred. Other than that, there's nothing you can really do about it. I mean, you're at an impasse, and if they're getting divorced, then they obviously are not on grounds.
I'm sorry. That's just... Oh my god.
One of the comments, take the foam off the sword. Just...
You're a perfect goddamn cinnamon roll too good for this world. Jesus Christ.
So going on...
Yeah, let's just have everybody beat each other with PVC pipes.
Going on to some lighter topics.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this has dealt so much with like horrible, sad things that unfortunately happen. Max wants to know,
pretty dark
how do you
episode so
ask
far, yeah.
out that special someone at game? That's a good question. What do you guys think?
Let's assume that all the stars are aligned right, and you've got confirmation from friends that it's a green light.
Oh, let's see.
In game or out of game?
Come on, no one wants to ask somebody out in game. That's
whatever.
dumb.
Just destroy my whole character. The last
I
2
mean,
years of
like-
my life.
You meet somebody at a game, you've played for a while, that's a natural evolution of relationship. You both kind of dig each other, and you want to ask them out, see if you like each other more, yada, yada, yada. How do you do it?
You just kind of say to them, like, hey, we should hang out. And then
First
you
of
do.
all,
and then
first of all,
things happen.
Wow.
That's what works for me. I'm
My
sorry.
heart. My heart.
if you're asking,
Romance, baby.
Sorry.
if you're
that's
asking,
what
how do you
works
ask
for
out that
you.
special someone at the game? First of all, let's go back to communication. Let's be sure that they're not going to misinterpret this as an in-game only action. Okay.
No, I precursed it. I cut all the
Okay.
dumb bull crap. You know they're gonna say yes. It's just, how do you do it? How do you make it nice?
Oh, you want it to be nice.
Yeah.
You just do it.
Come
I'd
on.
actually advise.
Just
I'd
ask.
actually advise against asking them out
Romance.
at the game. Why not ask them out somewhere not at the game when it's not necessarily centered entirely around LARP?
Yeah.
Well, I
Like
mean,
the
you're
Sunday
probably looking
diner.
a little grungy by Sunday. You know, a lot of that LARP funk. That's true.
That's how you really like it.
But I mean, if that's your common grounds, I mean, you have till Friday when you set up till Sunday post game. I mean, you don't want to ask them
Okay, so
before
if
the
you only see
game,
them at LARP,
because,
or maybe this
you
is
know,
the
but-
first time that you've met them at a game and you want to ask them out to hang out more, you could always follow up with like, hey, let's connect. And it doesn't have to be like romantic. It could just be like, hey, are you on Facebook? And then like, you don't have to ask someone on Facebook. You could ask for their phone number. You could go from there. Like, I'm just saying you don't have to ask them out at the game. That's all.
Okay.
Has anyone here ever been asked out at a game?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, Max. Are you the
Or
expert
is
on this?
I've been asked out. I've been asked out.
Do you remember, Max, how you first asked me out?
You. That was so
Amy,
long
Amy,
ago.
regale us with
I
your
don't even
tale.
remember. All that stuff's filed away. It's on some. It's on.
I
it's on
actually
some
don't
zip
remember.
drive.
That's why I'm
It's on
saying
some
that
zip
it was
drive.
I
I
probably
did
just like
the
let's hang
standard
out.
max move. I did the standard max move where I would invite you to hang out with groups of people or a social situation that I would host to orchestrate, and then the groups would just gradually get smaller until you're wondering whether or not we're all.
Oh, you pulled a John Green.
That's what I said. Didn't I say?
You pulled a John Green. Jesus.
That was old. That was like a long time ago. That was me then.
Well, it's in
I'm
the
much
past,
more
as
direct
long as
now
you acknowledge.
because I hate dating. I hate dating, but I love being in a relationship. The emotional roller coaster. I mean, I appreciate the romantic nature of it, and I respect it. It's extremely important, but it sucks. I mean, let's be honest. Dating sucks. So I'm just much more direct. I usually compliment the person, let them know that I was thinking about them a lot, and there were like questions I wanted to ask you, but I feel like I never have enough time to talk to you when we're at a game. It would be nice if I could have more time for me to talk.
Yeah, I've never had.
I'm tired
So
of it.
how is that different? How is that different from? Do you want to hang out? Let's hang
Mine's
out.
a lot cooler. If I came
It's a
up
lot
to you
more
and I was like, "Hey, you want to hang out?"
You use a lot more words.
Well, you could try the
Ultimately,
Tumblr approach and, just hit them with a line like, "Hey, baby, I hear the king has a new advisor.
Oh.
Want to buy my
Try
dwarven
that.
crafts?" something.
I haven't
NPC
ventured into
dialogue,
Tumblr.
shit like that.
I feel like I need a parent if I go to Tumblr.
You don't need a parent. What you do need is, and I'm working on this. I'm inventing this for stuff like Tumblr and those really sort of berserker news sites. Is I am patenting and trying to invent right now eyeball bleach. And when it's on the market, then I'll tell you, and I'll just comp you a free bottle or something like that.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, I have
appreciate
never
that. You're always thinking
been-
about me.
I'm thinking about everybody.
I have
I'm a
never been
human.
asked out at game because, as I mentioned before, I ended up marrying the guy that I was dating when I started LARPing. So that's kind of always come up before that awkward moment. But I know that like people have inquired with more bravado than they should have, and were told by people other than me that was not going to happen. So I would say if you don't know the status out of game of the person that you out of game wish to ask out, maybe ask around instead of being like, I'm gonna ask her out. Yeah, like find out some info, like get your sources straight. Like chances are they're in the community and other people know what their life is like out of game. So do your research.
Wait a second. I think you asked me out.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah. And I think it was after a Modern Earth event. You were drunk on power from playing Allison, and you were in a cute little checkered skirt, and you asked me
Amy
out.
drunk on
You were
power.
like,
I just want to see that.
That's what I.
And then you did
And see,
like the
what did I
one
say?
finger like air twirl.
Speculate on how that
Pulled it to
is.
the side. Drunk on power.
For the record, for anyone listening to the chat, that actually worked for me as Max and I dated and lived together for the next 2 or 3 years. So
And it was one of the most meaningful relationships of my life.
Likewise, absolutely, love you.
Aw.
So that hey, let's hang out worked. So
Totally.
So
I
Lee
stand
also
corrected.
wants to
Right
there you
know what's been your "Aw" moment at a LARP. I have a lot. Yeah, that I think
Did
you
we
guys
just
just covered.
cover
How
it?
about in game? Like, what's been like a cute moment for your character?
Oh,
I got one. So I've actually been proposed to 3 or 4 times in game by 3 or 4 different people, but in at least 2 of those cases, they sang to me during entertainment and then
that's very
asked me to
cute.
marry them. So that was very sweet.
Yes, songs, right?
Yeah.
Songs are the best.
Yeah.
I actually,
In front of like the town.
for
That was
once,
not
I
Max.
actually have something relevant to say on the subject. So I do this anime LARP, and it's basically conventions. You pick up a character from the sheet and stuff like that. Science. Yeah, that's actually I'll give that's actually pretty strong advice. But so, it was so I got there and I was dealing with my own crap, which is a story that shall remain for another time. But someone was handing out these flyers where these two characters, and it's like you were invited to the wedding between, and I can't remember the character names, but it was some weird pairing, and it turns out it was an actual engaged couple, and they took them off into one of the side rooms because it was just these 4 rooms at the hotel. They were like really tiny ass conference rooms, and so they took them into one room, and my friend actually officiated, and I'm not sure because I wasn't there for that. I didn't want to crash the ceremony. I didn't really know anyone involved. But I think they did like most of the ceremony in character. And it was just really adorable, and due to other circumstances at the time, I just really needed something adorable like that. So it was just like, ah. And even if it wasn't in character, that they got married, not like during a break, not like they took them out of play, but during game time, this one room, basically, they just had people going, no, this is a closed scene. People are getting married in here.
It wasn't in character, but real quick, it was, they thought about me, and I was NPCing, I was writing a weekend, and I was setting up a super complicated encounter all of Saturday. I didn't eat lunch, I didn't eat dinner, and when we were getting ready to start, there was a plate of food waiting for me. And it's so simple, it's so stupid, but the fact that the person took the initiative, went out of time, got me like extra food and like set it aside, kept it warm, like that was probably like, I was just like, wow, it's nice to have someone always looking out for me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm pushing myself, and it was like that was like
out
probably one of my dull moments.
I was proposed to at a LARP, and we were there with a bunch of friends, and it was not a game that we went to more than once, but it was still really cool because all of our friends are there. So that was obviously a nice moment. My husband was like, hey, I'll be right back. I'll meet up with you at the inn. And I was like, okay. And I and I thought that I was just reading what you typed, and I was like, that's suspect. And then his best friend was like being extra engaging and like charismatic, like even more so than his character, who was already overly charismatic. It was Biscuit. He was playing a rogue, and he was like, he started to be like extra talkative, and I was like, something's up, what's going on? And then like Tina was doing this like thing, but I didn't know. I just thought something was weird. Yeah. And like, yeah, TinaLeaks.com, it's a thing. But anyways, like, yeah. But anyways, yeah, I was surprised something happened, and it was really cool. And then like they announced it in front of everyone, and that was neat. In character, let me try to think of some all moments. I'm trying to think. There was a character who no longer plays it at my main game. He definitely had a little crush on my character and couldn't express it. So like he would always just kind of stand there, and like he wouldn't do this, and he would like have his arms like sort of like, you know, by his stomach, and he'd just stand there like he was like guarding all the time. And it was sort of weird though, because he would never like say much to her. But you know, he would like jump in. He would he would jump in when like someone would be a jerk and her like, you know, actual like protector character friend person wasn't there, and he would like jump in and be like, so, you know, an NPC would come by and be like, who wants to help? And he would like shove her, you know, into that. That was kind of fun. But he went away and never came back. Sad. It would be interesting if he came back though. He would definitely be sad. Oh well. Not all. I guess that was depressing. The next question is, do you know anyone who's done their OOG wedding as a LARP event?
I feel like we've had people ask us about it. Yeah.
But they weren't like people that really played our game regularly. Mm-hmm. They were just like, hey, this place is renting out a facility. We could use it and not have to pay any money.
Right, exactly.
Like, but they didn't say that. But like that's what we immediately found out, and we were like, I just don't think that that's what either of us are looking for right now. I think that if you do a little bit of soul searching, that your wedding should be a special time, and you should do it in your own special place, and
not co-opt somebody else's.
Yeah, they liked the idea, and I thought it was a good idea. But then it started to become like, well, we want to bring our parents, but they don't want to have characters, and then we started to realize, like, no, you want to pay, you know, your $40 for the weekend and have us put on a wedding for you, and That's not the way this works.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I know people who have like involved LARP elements at their out of game wedding, and I know a few other couples who have done the LARP proposal, but I don't think I know anybody who's done an out of game wedding as a LARP event though. I mean, that could be cool, I guess. Like for me, the weirdness would be in like are your characters together? You know what I mean? Like there's that whole kind of thing, and then like, do you go to this wedding with like your in-game person or like your spouse? You know, that would kind of make things a little awkward. Or like, are you going to the wedding in character, or is it completely out of character but you're just wearing their costumes? And then like it could still lead to some weirdness. Like, you know, my character would absolutely never ever like go on a date with someone else, even if he was as attractive as my real life husband, because of, you know, who she is in game and her interest in game. So that could be a little odd. Depends on how you do it, I guess.
Yeah.
But any last questions before we wrap up? I see one here. Have you ever hidden your LARP hobby from a significant other? This is funny that it's a max energy question because I'll answer this quickly because, like I said, I didn't start LARPing until it was actually introduced to me by the man I ended up marrying. But I've been a geek for most of my life. I've been a role player for a very long time, long before I was a LARPer. I was doing online text-based RP, and that's something that I never ever hid. And even when I go on job interviews, which people do often equate to going on like a date, you know, never really hid the LARPing. I am a proponent of crossing the streams. Look at him shaking his head. Look at that.
I started tabletopping when I was 16. I started doing, medieval living history shortly thereafter, maybe a few years after that. I have only ever dated really nerd guys or LARPer guys, or Mystic Realms actually helped me meet most of my relationships for the past 20 years. All of my relationships for the past 20 years. So, no, I only date LARPers.
Nerd guys are awesome.
They're my thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Max?
Yeah.
Who me? What's the question?
Sorry, I just don't understand. Damn.
I'm just gonna act like I'm frozen.
You asked the question.
Liars get props.
I am a complex individual, and
I mean, you're not wrong.
I like variety in my life. I like variety in my life, and I pursue a variety of women over the course of my lifetime. And not all of them like to boffer fight or dress up as an elf princess or whatever. So
and they're wrong.
Yeah, okay, and that's fine. Sometimes I like to date women that I'm not necessarily going to marry and spend the rest of my life with. And there's a certain honeymoon period before I reveal to them my hobby.
Oh, this could be a great reality show.
Yeah, I mean, so to answer the question, yes, I have hidden my hobby, but all of the meaningful relationships in my life are aware of it and accept it, and I've shared it with it. But yeah, when I meet you or if I go out, I meet you at a party, or if it's the first time we're going out, I'm not gonna be like, hey, I'm like the best boffer fighter on the Northeast coast. Like, that's just not my approach. I don't feel that. This hobby has a huge impact on my life, and it's helped me become who I am, but I don't feel that I am identified solely by one of my hobbies or one of my creative interests. I talk about how I like to write, how I like to be creative and things of that nature, but there's a social stigma to it. I mean, it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it is now a little bit, but I mean, we've made some ground, some headway, but if I mentioned it, I would be prejudged. And, sometimes those girls are really hot, and that doesn't mean that they're as worldly. They don't necessarily understand it. So it doesn't have to be the screeching of the brakes. You know what I mean? It can be something that's slowly integrated.
Have you ever done the big reveal of, we need to have a talk, I'm a LARPer? And, like, how did it go? And do you think it was a big deal because you prolonged having the talk?
Some of those relationships we never had to reveal because they didn't last that long, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
Some of them did last long, and they came with me to an event. And there was a graduation. It was a gradual release. I like to do this, or I like to do that, or if you ever been to a murder mystery dinner, it was the slow reveal, where it was just a couple inches at a time, and then they see it, which made for some interesting and creative stories when they found some things in my house. What's this? Why do you have a suit of armor in your closet? And I'm like, what are you doing looking up there? But I remember one time I was a server. This was a long time ago. I was living with my friend Matt, and he and I played D&D a lot, and he was super into it, and he had all these cool figures and dice and pictures and everything. And there was a super hot girl I used to wait tables with, and she picked me up, or we had a break or something. We went back to my place, and I was super into her, but nothing ever happened. Womp womp. But so she's in my apartment, and she's looking at all this D&D stuff, and I'm like, oh fuck, I didn't think that all these cool little figures would be out. They were new, and I didn't know that they were out. And my friend Matt saw and read the situation and how much she liked it, and he was like, yeah, these are all Max's, these are all Doc's. And at first I was like, why the hell is he throwing me under the bus and making me look like an asshole? And then I had misread the situation, I misgauged it, and she was totally into it, started asking me 100 questions.
Awesome. I mean, I think over time it's become more acceptable to be a nerd in general. I still think LARP isn't how you always want to jump into the conversation, but
yeah, LARP is kind of sort of there are tiers. There are sort of I don't know exactly how to put it. There's a spectrum sort of thing. So LARP's on one further end. Amy, I'm sorry I cut you off, by the way. So
no, you're fine. Go ahead.
There's sort of this spectrum, and LARP is on the further end of the spectrum because it's okay, there's each group is well, I'm not that far out, and eventually you get to the point where it's yes, I have a foam sword and dress up in a suit of armor and spend the weekend running around the woods.
But the different experiences.
I imagine there would be. I can't actually say different experiences, but yeah, there's just there's bands, and maybe LARPing is starting to sort of come into it because I've noticed a lot more people doing it, and it's I don't know if it's gained more prominence or just that I've become more aware of it, but either way, it's just kind of made its way into things. So I think it might be a little more acceptable, or a little easier, not more acceptable. Sorry, I apologize. Please, next, it is in pop culture more, and it's in pop culture in a more awesome way, actually, I think. I've seen it in movies, and it's not, oh, they're doing this geeky thing. I've actually seen this is kind of a regular kind of thing. For Anthro is kind of, I think that might be the furthest band right now.
That's another chat.
That's a different chat entirely.
Yeah, I know. My question was, I was wondering, because Tara and I are both yes, we're LARPers, and we tell people that we're LARPers, and we don't care. And I was just wondering if, given sort of a male-female, and I hate to be binary, but given a male-female situation, you know what I mean? If it's easier for, like Max was talking about, girls who are 6 in the real world and they come to a LARP and they might feel a little bit more confident about how they look. And I'm definitely one of those people. So, is it an easier experience for me to be hey, I'm a LARPer, I'm a gamer, and have that be an attractive quality because I'm female, as opposed to one of you guys who's going to say it to someone and have them be you're a dork.
No, girls that are geeky are huge check in the plus column to majority of men. Okay.
Yeah. It's the myth of the unicorn.
Sorry, it is what it is.
I apologize.
I don't write the rules of society. I just observe them, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's a negative sometimes if a guy is super geeky.
It's because of the stereotype. I mean, it's the negative.
Sometimes
the
when women
stereotype
are
of the
geeky.
geek guy is the nerd sitting in his underwear in his parents' basement, and the stereotype of the gamer girl is she sits around in her underwear and plays video games and looks like a model. And so those unfortunately predefine these expectations for people.
Are both true. Sorry.
There's also no there was something, and I know I'm going to totally misinterpret this thing, but I don't have time to like check through Wikipedia and a billion articles to get there. There's this thing that I encountered once called sort of the myth of the unicorn, where it's like because women are less in gaming spaces,
it's a perception.
It's like, oh,
it's actually
that's
not.
Sort
it's
of
about
cool.
half and half now.
Yeah, there seems to be less. There's
Depending on
the
the
perception of less.
Yeah.
Half and half.
I know. Yes. It is the perception due to God. I'm not going to speculate on any of that because I'm also not a sociologist. That there's this perception that women are less likely to do that. And so if they do, there's sort of this mystique, this intrigue, like, oh, when a guy says, oh yeah, no, I play D&D or something like that, there's this perception. And again, it's sort of this myth that's been perpetuated by society and idiots, that they're basically part of that subset that never really got anywhere, and they're basically some loser who sits in their basement with a bunch of bespectacled weirdos playing with little miniatures and dice. And there's not as much mystique to that. Yeah, I do that. Well, I actually have to do that online because I live out in the middle of goddamn nowhere on the border of like several towns where nobody really wants my neighborhood. So
I also feel that, again, this is also based on who we are and our POV from these vantage points in the conversation, whereas people that have different interests would probably view it differently. But the fact that we are nerds and we are men, we see it this way. But the idea that we see a potential mate that has a similar interest is great, whereas typically the people that we pursue do not have those similar interests. Whereas if a guy expresses such a unique interest, but the fact that it has a heavy, consistent time investment, that once a month I'm gone for a weekend, if it's that kind of game. But not only that, that our culture is one in which we talk about it and we prepare for it, and that it does absorb a lot of hours of our day. And the fact that each one of those hours, it will probably be exclusive to a partner, that even if they accept our geek status, that ultimately they might not enjoy because we'll be taken away from them. I feel a little bit is healthy in a relationship, that we should not always be with our partners 100% of the time, but it's definitely not like a 5% thing. It's definitely much more of a percentage of your time, and that even a mature, open-minded partner would be hesitant to commit to somebody that's going to be spending so much time away from them.
The whole, is it more acceptable for females to be more open about LARPing? I think yes. And I posted a link in the chat there that's actually about mentioning LARP in job interviews, which I'm in a creative field. I'm a blog editor. So I've actually mentioned it in job interviews several times because I'm expected to be creative. And I've even talked to editors at like major comic book publishers, and they're like, if you haven't published stories and interacted in theater and really participated in that kind of life, we're not really going to be interested in you. And so in my particular field, it's actually like a bonus that I LARP. And it also makes me stand out among different candidates. It's not great for every job field. It's not great for every person, but for me, it works. That said, I also think part of the reason that it works for me is because I'm a woman, and it's socially more acceptable for me to be all about like theater and my participation in the arts. It's almost expected rather for someone in my field to participate in those things, especially if they're a woman. And unfortunately, with the way gender roles are, and it's sometimes seen as a negative or a weakness if men reveal themselves to be participants in the dramatic arts. It's seen as womanish, it's seen as gay, and women and gay people are seen as less than men in our society. And unfortunately, because we have not achieved a feminist society, it really hurts men. And for that reason, I think I understand that, why men feel that they cannot be as open about those kinds of things as women. I definitely, appreciate that, because there's a lot more negativity geared towards men who just kind of admit to being in any way dramatic or creative. So, and it's sad. I wish, people could just be who they are and be accepted for it, but that's unfortunately not how society is. So, any...
And there's also a higher societal pressure of there's some people I've encountered who believe like in invasion, that a guy doing like something specifically creative can be invasive. And
the other thing, like
really
the whole
off-putting
unicorn thing, like
so
that is part of the reason why like I didn't read comic books for so many years. I love comic books now, and I love comic book culture. But if you've ever been a woman alone walking into a comic book store, there are certain reactions that you get. One of them is like every
sort
guy
of Alfred Hitchcock,
you, and the other one is they just kind of like stare at you like you're not real, like you're the unicorn. And neither of them are very comfortable feeling. And the other thing that happens is you get treated like you don't know anything. And I was actually doing some research for something I was writing, and I went into a comic book store with a male friend, and I was 30 years old at the time, and I was asking a question about where to find a specific comic in their rather disorganized, poorly lit, bullshit comic book store, and this guy was like, oh, well, if you're interested in Thor comics, maybe you should talk to your big brother about it. And I was like, first of all, I'm like 30 years old. What do you mean there's like big brother bullshit? Second of all, like, I may not know everything about comics, but I know a lot about Thor, bro. A lot. Let me tell you about Thor. Like, come on.
Because it blows my mind when I hear those stories, because it's like, who do they have jockeying these registers? Like, just retards. I mean, sorry to be inappropriate, but I mean, these guys, like, aren't you merchants? Don't you want to make the sale? Doesn't woman money buy the same stuff as man money? I was like, you're supposed to be like, oh my God, I'm so happy you're here. Come on in. Let me show you all this stuff.
Exactly.
If you like this stuff, you'll probably like this. Now, this is something you haven't
That's
heard.
Not
this is written by the same person. This is something that's illustrated or penned by the same person. Like, sell them.
My husband is one of
arm.
Do you want a Thor bust figure? I know it's $280, but maybe we can do a layaway program, or I can open a line of credit for you if you're willing to co-sign your house.
Yeah.
That's me. That's me at a comic book store.
But back to relationships, like my husband. Sorry, guys. Back to relationships, like my husband's always saying. He's like, why would a guy want to stop more girls from getting involved in this hobby? Yeah. Like, if girls want to show up and read comic books and game, don't we want that? Don't we want more girls? I mean, he's obviously cis and very hetero, but don't we want more girls to be participating, more women to be participating in this hobby? Like, why would we want to run them out of this situation?
Yeah.
If anything,
so, does anyone else have anything more to add before we get ready to sign off tonight?
Territory issue.
I think that comic book shops should offer Lush gift cards when you purchase a sum of.
I could actually really use that. I've been looking for decent body washes and shit, and
I'm a fan of Ocean Salt, and I use a face mask from Lush.
I like cross promotion
products. That would be pretty cool too. They are. But I would justify.
Yeah, they're so expensive, though. Those products.
Like, if they started offering like soap gift cards and whatnot, I would freaking even buy Ms. Marvel, and I think
I'm gonna go ahead and pop a link into the chat here.
My trials and tribulations.
This is a link to female-friendly comic book stores, which are a list of places where myself, the other editors of the Geek Initiative, and our readers feel that they have been treated fairly. Unfortunately, there is a need for a list because of stores like the one I mentioned. But the great news is that new stores are getting added to this list every day. If you do have a suggestion, please go ahead and email me. I'll put my email in here, and I will add it to the list.
Yeah.
Okay, and I can't type and talk at the same time. I will add it to the list and and put it on the site there. Amy, do you want to do the honors and wrap it up and tell everybody about the amazing LARPs of South Jersey, such as Mystic Realms and 17kingdomig.com?
Yeah, boy. We'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and we hope to see you at one of the many LARPs in South Jersey. Mr. Grums is my home LARP, 7K is Tara's home LARP, but everybody, checks out different things.
Awesome.
Yeah, check us out. Come say hi. And anything to add, Max?
Last weekend was a great Mystic Realms event, rising towards a very interesting storyline. There were more females at the game last weekend than there were males, and it was a very well written and executed event. We look forward to seeing people again at the first weekend of March, and then we have a fledgling game that runs quarterly in the third weekend of March, and it is
yeah,
it's Tears.
It's so Tears, and then Dreamation.
I think it's Tears, yeah.
We have
Deadpool
this weekend. That's what we're all celebrating. Not Valentine's Day, right,
Yes.
Amy? And then the weekend after that, we have Dreamation convention in Central Jersey that many members of TGI will be going and probably documenting. And I'd love to see some of you guys there. If some of you guys are thinking about checking out Dexposure or Dreamation, tweet us, message us, email us. I would love to party or hang out with you guys. Check out a LARP with you guys or tabletop with you guys. It would be great to hang out with you and see some of you guys in person. You guys are so active in the chat, and we really appreciate it.
I'm also going to give you guys a link to next week's chat discussion
so
here.
come on out and
let me grab that real fast. There we go. Set that up for you. Next week is Pimp My Mod, where Max Energy is actually going to help everybody with making their different mod scenes and LARP scenarios more interesting and engaging. So come and bring your questions. Yeah. Awesome. On a budget, right? Sounds good. All right. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Again, this has been LARP Chat Live with the Geek Initiative.
Thanks for having me as a guest again. It's always enjoyable.
Thanks, Sam, for coming out.
Thanks, Sam.